Next month, you'll get to meet your 10th grandchild. Suddenly, I noticed her belly was swollen, and Mary was happily rubbing it. The room was small, and with 4 children and 9 grandchildren around, I hadn't noticed. She was already in her final month. Wow! Surprise, joy, and then an overwhelming anxiety all hit me at once. Well, I hadn't seen you in about a year, so I never got the chance to tell you. It's a boy. Live long, Grandma. Yes, indeed. Everyone present rejoiced and celebrated this happy news. Amid the exchanged words of happiness, I couldn't fully suppress the complex feelings inside me. The truth was, my eldest son Tom had been continuously taking money from me, depleting my savings. Life had been a struggle day by day. I wish I could give Mary a present, but I no longer had the means. Never did I expect to feel so miserable at such a joyous gathering. I felt utterly pathetic and was on the verge of tears. I quietly left the room and went upstairs. Tom's door, slightly ajar, caught my eye. What state was his room in now? As I slowly opened the door, the devastated room was revealed. Stunned, tears I had been holding back rolled down my cheeks. Then, I heard someone coming up loudly from downstairs. At that moment, various thoughts raced through my mind, and one possible outcome crossed my mind. That just couldn't happen. In a split second, I jumped off the balcony. My name is Kate. A widow in my 60s, I lost my husband a few years ago. For about 3 years after his death, I was in a slump. But realizing I couldn't go on like that and encouraged by a close neighbor, I decided to take a part-time job. Now, I work part-time at a supermarket, which gives me something to look forward to every day. I enjoy the small talks with customers lining up at the cash register. Fish is cheap today, isn't it? I would initiate conversations. This made even the busiest of housewives feel relaxed, and I was happy about it. A man in work clothes came to buy a big hamburger for lunch. He seemed to be in his mid to late 30s. His suntanned face looked robust, reminding me of my son Tom. I have 2 sons and 2 daughters, 4 children in total. Raising them was a struggle, but I managed to get all 4 through to college. My second son, eldest daughter, and youngest daughter each found wonderful partners and got married. Now, they're blessed with children and are very busy every day. Only my eldest, Tom, has no desire to marry and lives with me. He is very caring, perhaps because he is the eldest. He takes the initiative to help with things I don't understand, like internet and smartphone settings. Also, he liked to spend his money on hobbies. His salary and bonuses often went to his fishing hobby. I bought a new reel again. He was happily unpacking a parcel that had arrived today, admiring his new gear. It's fine to spend on your hobby, but are you saving properly? I am. I've also started some investment savings. He had been managing his finances well, unknown to me, and contributing to the household. I was relieved to know he was managing his money properly. Are you going sea fishing again this weekend? Yeah, I'll be going. Just like the man in work clothes, Tom's face and arms were sunburned. I could tell he enjoyed spending the day out with his friends, fishing under the sun. It was healthy, and that was what mattered most. Be careful not to fall into the sea. I know. Tom inspected his new fishing gear one by one, his eyes sparkling. He looked like a little child beholding a treasure. Beside him, I happened to glance at my planner. The first Sunday of last month was my birthday. On this day, my married children and grandchildren came over, and we all celebrated my birthday together. They insisted on celebrating every year without fail, so it has become a tradition. Especially my youngest daughter, Mary, was enthusiastic about it. It's only once a year, Mom, she would say, and also invite her sister and brother. With a total of 9 grandchildren, the house felt a bit cramped with everyone in it. But that was the only day we could all gather. I try to think it's nice once in a while. Despite everything, having a large family is something I'm happy and grateful for. Thanks to them, I always look forward to the next birthday right after one ends. To still look forward to birthdays at my age. I murmured to myself and couldn't help but laugh, even though I was alone. Looking back, I think that moment was the peak of my happiness. Amidst days of cherishing happiness, it came unexpectedly. On a day when spring was supposed to be near, yet cold rain fell. When I returned home from my part-time job, Tom was sitting in the living room. In the dark, head in hands. He was muttering something. "Tom? What's wrong?"
I did nothing wrong. It's him."
Sensing something serious, I quickly turned on the light and made him some hot cocoa. In the bright room, I saw that Tom's hair and clothes were wet from the rain. His usually vibrant, sun-kissed face looked pale and drained. Then, I took my time to listen to him. Shockingly, he had been laid off.
"My boss tricked me. And then, it was actually his mistake, but I got blamed."
"But can't you apologize and ask for another chance?"
"It's no use. It was a pretty big deal, and they said it's irreversible."
"That's terrible."
"I'm done. I can't trust anyone anymore."
I couldn't stop him from crying. Nor could I tell him not to. It was the first time I saw Tom so defeated. How could I make him understand that I knew how he felt, betrayed by a boss he trusted? For now, I suggested he take a warm bath. Then, Tom ate a little dinner and went to bed early. It was a night when Tom, who had been so positive about work and hobbies, changed completely. From the next day, he mostly stayed in his room. It seemed he spent his days in a daze, possibly shocked, not even trying to look for a new job. He stopped going fishing. Fishing gear boxes were carelessly thrown in a corner of the living room. Could it be that he would remain shut-in forever? I never imagined the lively Tom becoming a shut-in. Could it really come to this? However, my fears became reality, and Tom gradually stopped coming out of his room. When I called out to him through his door, I could hear him shouting back,
"I can't trust anyone anymore. I don't want to work."
"But maybe it'd be good to go outside, even just a little."
"Leave me alone."
After that, Tom didn't respond to me anymore. I kept going to my part-time job while Tom was shut in. Being at work was a relief. Talking with colleagues and having casual conversations with customers was soothing. But the moment I clocked out and headed home was the most depressing. Walking home slowly, shoulders drooped. I was desperate for Tom to recover. Seeing the man in work clothes coming to buy a hamburger every lunchtime made me feel inexplicably sad. What should I do? I never imagined my son, an adult, would become a shut-in. I was at a loss, not knowing who to consult. I thought about asking his siblings, but I didn't want to burden them with unnecessary worry. They have their own families. It wouldn't be fair to involve them in Tom's issues. "Tom? You're there, right?" Trying to do something, I stood in front of Tom's room upstairs. "Come down and eat something, at least." No matter how much I called, there was no answer.
"Today it's pizza."
Then, a dull sound. Tom had hit the wall. I was startled and stared at the door. Was he saying to leave him alone? I wasn't sure, but something must have upset him. "Tom, I'll leave the pizza on the kitchen table. Heat it up and eat it later." I made sure my voice didn't tremble as I said this and went downstairs. I just wished for Tom to return to his old self. A few days later, on my day off, Tom came out of his room. His hair was messy, sticking out everywhere. And his beard had grown, making his face look unkempt. Still in his pajamas, he opened the fridge, grabbed 3 cans of beer, and went back to his room. I worried if he was drinking like that every day. I knocked on Tom's door at lunch and dinner time. "You need to eat something nutritious."
"Shut up! You don't understand how I feel."
"Don't just drink. Why not go fishing like you used to?"
"Do you really hate me that much?"
"It's not that. I just want you to be your energetic self again." I was about to say that when Tom came out of his room.
I'll go out then. Happy now?
With that, Tom stormed out of the house. Where was he going in his pajamas? Without even telling me his destination? What am I supposed to do now? All I could do was murmur to myself in the living room. If my husband were still alive, what would he have said in such a situation? Looking at his photo for help yielded no response. It must have been showing on my face at work because one day, the manager asked me, "Your expression has been dark lately. Are you okay?" I didn't want to be a burden, so I forced a smile and replied, "I'm fine, just a bit of family stuff." Yes, just a little. Just a bit, I told myself as I worked through the day. Mary, even after getting married and having children, had always been concerned about me. On holidays, she would sometimes bring my granddaughter and for a visit. But lately, since Tom started shutting himself away, we had decided to meet outside. I didn't want them to see the mess his room had become. Mary didn't seem to mind for the first 2 or 3 times, but by the 4th, she seemed to sense something was off. It was during a break at a restaurant that she asked me, "Mom, is something wrong? We've been meeting outside a lot lately."
Is that so? But Anne seems to be having fun.
And was happily playing with a killer whale plush toy I had bought for her. "Is Tom okay? He's not bothering you by going fishing all the time, is he?"
Not at all. Tom goes fishing almost every week. It's a sign he's doing well.
The truth was he wasn't going fishing at all, but spending his time lazing around or going to the casino. I couldn't tell her that, so I desperately covered it up. Despite his previous good money management, lately, he's been squandering money on casinos and lotteries. "As long as he's okay," Mary said as she sipped her coffee. The sun was warm enough to make one slightly sweat, signaling the end of winter. I watched Mary and Anne, wishing this moment could last forever. But my wish was in vain as reality only got worse.
"Give me some money, Mom."
When I got home, Tom was demanding money in an irritated tone. "What for? What happened?"
"It's the casino. They've got this new slot machine, and I lost everything. I need to go back and win."
"Stop it. No more casinos, no lotteries."
"Give me the money now. I need it to get back at them."
He snatched my bag, took some money from my wallet, and dashed out. It all happened so fast, I was left speechless. Terrifying. That feeling came later. My bag and the emptied wallet were thrown carelessly on the hallway floor. I just sat down, powerless. Why has it come to this? Will I never see the lively and vibrant Tom again? Am I doomed to spend my days with a declining Tom? With that despair, the days and then weeks passed. The frequency of Tom's outings and the amount of money he demanded increased. Sometimes I would find my wallet lighter than it should be. I couldn't leave my wallet at home without worry anymore. Thinking it a good opportunity, I started using electronic payments I learned at my cashier job, carrying no cash. I was happy about accumulating points, but when Tom found out I wasn't carrying cash, he exploded again.
"Why not? It's just some pocket money. Why don't you get a job? Don't mess with me. Give me the money."
He kept demanding money, spending it all on gambling. When the money was gone, he would shout and scream for more. I feared it might escalate to violence. I was so worn down, I lost the energy to meet with my children. Gradually, I saw less and less of Mary and Anne, using my part-time job as an excuse. After about a year of this exhausting routine, Mary contacted me.
"It's almost your birthday, right? Let's all get together next Sunday."
According to Mary, the grandchildren were planning another surprise for this year. Looking at the calendar, the annual birthday celebration was just around the corner. I hadn't even realized it. Given Tom's current state and my own condition, I couldn't feel like celebrating. I wanted to decline. But contrary to my true feelings, the idea lifted my spirits. The thought of my children and grandchildren wanting to celebrate with me made me happy. For just that one day a year, I too wanted to be lively and happy. That's what I found myself thinking.
Thank you. I'll keep that day open then.
I haven't spoken a word about Tom to them. As long as I keep quiet, and as long as Tom doesn't meet anyone, they won't find out. No need to worry them. That's what I decided, to pretend everything was fine with Tom just for the day of the celebration.
Tom and I are living happily as ever.
That's what I'll say. I murmured to myself when Tom wasn't around, convincing myself. After Mary's call, I started cleaning up the house bit by bit. It would be troublesome if there was no space to step in this room when more than 10 people gathered. I gathered all the dust-covered delivery boxes and threw them out with the trash. The bundles of lottery tickets thrown in the trash can were also bagged and discarded. I vacuumed while Tom was out because he would yell that it was noisy. I cleaned carefully, considering the birthday party was coming up. And then, the day arrived. It was a clear, calm day. About an hour before the children and grandchildren were to arrive, Tom left. When he found out about the birthday party the day before,
"It's too noisy. Cancel it,"
he had shouted.
"I can't cancel it. Everyone's already made plans." "Are you kidding me?"
He then raged in his room for a while. Just a short while ago, after snatching some money from me, he went off to the casino. I felt a bit relieved. This way, Tom wouldn't have to meet any of the other family members. All that was left was to wait for everyone to arrive. Not long after Tom had left, the children and grandchildren started to arrive one by one. Being wished a happy birthday by everyone filled my heart. 9 grandchildren, each of them, celebrated with me. I was happy, yet I felt a complex mix of emotions. Was I right to feign happiness for these children? That thought unexpectedly crossed my mind. It's okay, it's just for today, I told myself, fighting off that small sense of guilt. The birthday party started soon after. Appetizers, salads, chicken, and pizza brought by everyone lined the tables. The last to arrive was a birthday cake made by the grandchildren, which Mary brought. The cake was topped with plenty of chocolate, strawberries, and blueberries. In the center, a chocolate plate read "Happy Birthday, Grandma." Its crooked letters endearingly hard to read. The warmth of their effort touched my heart.
"How wonderful! Thank you, everyone."
I hugged each of the grandchildren, one by one. Their efforts in preparing this meant the world to me. Lastly, I hugged Anne.
"Thank you, Anne."
I put the strawberries on. Her childish words overwhelmed me, and I hugged her again. "Mom, you know," Mary said, standing next to Anne. Suddenly, I noticed her belly was swollen, and Mary was happily rubbing it.
"Next month, you'll get to meet your 10th grandchild."
The room was so crowded I hadn't noticed. She was already in her final month.
Wow!
Surprise, joy, and an anxiety no less significant than these emotions all surged at once.
"Well, I haven't seen you for about a year, so I never got the chance to tell you.
It's a boy."
"Live long, Grandma."
"Yes, indeed." And hugged me around the neck, leaning in. Everyone present rejoiced and celebrated this happy news. "Congratulations. Our family is growing, I'll send a gift," they exchanged various words. Yet, somewhere inside me, I couldn't suppress the complex feelings. In truth, Tom had been continuously taking money from me, depleting my savings. My daily life had become a struggle. I wanted to give Mary a present if I could, but I no longer had the means. I never expected to feel so miserable at such a joyful gathering. Amidst the celebratory mood, I quietly slipped away. I felt so pitiful that I was on the verge of tears. Pretending to go to the bathroom, I went upstairs. Tom's room, with the door half open, caught my eye. What state was his room in now? I slowly opened the door. The room, with the curtains drawn, was dim. Empty beer cans and bottles, lottery tickets scattered everywhere. And fishing magazines left as they were. My business bag was torn and stuffed into the trash can. The fishing rods and other tools, relegated to a corner of the room, were covered in dust. In that devastated room, I stood dumbfounded. Why had it come to this? Tears I had been holding back streamed down my cheeks. Then, I heard a loud noise from downstairs and someone coming up. Turning around in shock, I saw Tom. His eyes, peering through disheveled bangs, gleamed unnervingly. As he spoke in a growling tone.
I lost at the casino. Give me some money, I'm going back.
Enough is enough.
Just give me the money.
I don't have it right now. The grandchildren are here, so please be quiet.
You have money for the grandchildren but not for me?
I don't have enough to give to the grandchildren either, really.
Lies. You're just treating me like a nuisance.
Tom, furious, advanced on me.
Stop it. I want to give a gift to my new grandchild too, and it's frustrating that I can't. Isn't your own son more important to you?
I slipped past Tom and fled. Finding another room that was open, I entered one usually used for drying laundry, which had a balcony. Looking back, Tom was chasing after me, his eyes bloodshot, swinging his arms wildly.
Money! Give me money!
I went out onto the balcony. If Tom hit me and I fell badly, who knows what could happen. Such an incident might lead to Tom being arrested. This could severely hinder his chances of reintegrating into society. The remaining children and grandchildren would be hurt and saddened. That was absolutely not acceptable. In a moment of desperation, I jumped from the balcony. A fall from the second floor might result in broken bones at worst. Escaping Tom like this seemed a small price to pay. I landed headfirst. The world turning red, blue, then dark. A tremendous shock went through my body, and for a moment, my senses vanished. Alerted by the noise, the children screamed. The grandchildren started crying. And the area became chaotic. From the balcony, I saw Tom peering down. Looking shaken and frightened. He held his head and screamed. A cry heard by his siblings. I don't remember much after that. Tom's cries of regret or sorrow echoed in the distance. When I woke up, I was staring at the ceiling of a hospital room. The doctor told me I had sustained serious injuries requiring 6 months to heal. He scolded me.
Why on earth did you jump from the balcony?
I had fractured my right leg and right wrist, necessitating rehabilitation. Understandably, the children and grandchildren were shocked. They visited me in the hospital when they could, relieved I was alive. Though it was far from a simple matter of being safe, at least my life was spared. Everyone seemed relieved about that. Especially Mary thought her heart would stop. When she visited the hospital, she burst into tears upon seeing me.
Don't ever do something like that again. Mom.
I'm sorry. It seems Tom confessed everything to his siblings that day. This revelation made them aware of our financial and living situation. If you were in trouble, you should have told us. I didn't want to worry you. Worrying would have been far better than this. Mary said, tears streaming down her face, even in front of Anne. Knowing about mine and Tom's situation, the children offered financial and living support. They sympathized with Tom's layoff but strongly criticized his subsequent actions. Tom also seemed to have deeply reflected on his actions. He worked hard to find re-employment and luckily secured a position at a small real estate company. After securing the job, Tom started visiting me in the hospital. He entered the room, shrinking in apology. Mom, I'm sorry for all the trouble. His hair was neatly combed, his beard cleanly shaved. Dressed in a clean suit and tie, he looked like he was about to make a fresh start. I was surprised to see a slightly brighter atmosphere around him.
People can change, can't they?
Don't get all sentimental on me.
But how did you change so suddenly?
Tom hesitated a little, then, looking down shyly, said, That day, when you tried to escape from me by jumping from the balcony. Yes. At that moment, I thought I had no other choice. Watching you disappear as she fell from the balcony, everything I had done flashed before my eyes in an instant. Tears welled up in Tom's eyes.
And then I came to my senses, wondering what I had done.
My jumping must have been a huge shock to Tom. Though it was a drastic measure, it could also be considered a risky choice. I'm sorry. I won't do anything like that again.
That's my line. I'll take proper care of you, Mom, so don't leave me behind.
True to his words, Tom changed his attitude and returned to the energetic person he was before being laid off. My injuries healed well, and after being discharged from the hospital, I continued to live with Tom. I no longer intend to be angry with Tom. Both Tom and I are in a better situation now. Later, surrounded by our children and grandchildren, we also celebrated my discharge from the hospital.
This time, we'll celebrate grandly,
Mary said, seemingly having rallied the siblings. By the time I was discharged, Mary's baby had been born, increasing the grandchildren to 10. A little boy with adorable hands. All I wish for is that he lives a healthy, happy, and prosperous life.
This is definitely the way to go for pest control.
Amanda, after sprinkling insecticide in my room, cheerfully headed to the entrance. She locked me in my room, calling me a pest for not doing any housework due to my broken leg, and tried to exterminate me by spraying insecticide. If only Amanda had paid attention to whose screams were coming from the room, things wouldn't have ended up like this. I am Jessica, a 30-year-old office worker. My husband is Matthew, a 31-year-old office worker and a year older than me. We've been married for 2 years. I met Matthew at a cafe where I bought coffee almost every day. Seeing each other daily, we gradually became aware of each other, and I finally took the plunge and spoke to him, which led to our dating. About a year into our relationship, we decided to get married. My parents liked the sociable and gentle Matthew, and they always looked out for him. Matthew's family consisted of his quiet and reserved father, Daniel, his chatty and sometimes sarcastic mother, Amanda, and his sister, Megan. From the start, Amanda was prone to making thoughtless remarks.
What university did Jessica graduate from?
Where does she work? She was inquisitive about me when we first met. Coincidentally, I had graduated from a university affiliated with Matthew's, which seemed to satisfy her, but she didn't seem to understand my job. I work as a web designer. To which she responded, "That's hardly a proper job."
What a waste, considering you graduated from such a good university,
she said. Also, Amanda says a lot about things, and when she buys something,
"The cakes here are tasty but too small for the price. The food used to be good, but it's gone downhill lately, probably because the chef changed."
She always ended with a complaint. In contrast to Amanda, Megan was kind. "Mom, smaller is just right. Too big and it's hard on the stomach. Even if the chef changes, the taste doesn't really change that much." And would gently chide her. Seeing such interactions,
"Mom, cut it out."
Matthew would also get annoyed and join Megan in reprimanding. Initially, I was worried about getting along with Amanda, but being told we didn't have to live together and having Megan and Matthew to back me up made me think I could manage. When we got married, Matthew and I decided not to live together with the in-laws and rented an apartment instead. However, after a while, Amanda misstepped while walking down the stairs, fell, and broke her leg. Due to her age, Amanda had to be hospitalized for a while for both treatment and rehabilitation. While Amanda was hospitalized, Megan took care of her, but the problem was with Daniel. Daniel is a nice, quiet man but completely incapable of household chores. He had left all the cooking and laundry to Amanda, to the point where he struggled even to use a microwave oven. Megan did check in on the house occasionally, but with her own job and managing Amanda's laundry during her hospital stay, taking care of Daniel was clearly too much for her. "Hey, Matthew. Since I can do some of my work from home, how about we take care of Daniel for a while?" I suggested commuting to the in-laws' house until Amanda was discharged.
"That would really help. Thank you.
Matthew looked apologetic. Our apartment and the in-laws' house were about a 20-minute drive apart. So, I decided to go there after work to prepare meals and do the laundry. Daniel told us.
I'm sorry for the trouble. This is a big help,
he says and hands over the money. Eventually, even after Amanda is discharged, I'd like you to keep helping out for a while. That's what people started saying. 2 months into commuting between our apartment and the in-laws' house, Amanda's discharge was finalized. Thank you for taking care of Daniel. You really didn't have to go to such lengths. Amanda was her usual self. Hearing this, Matthew became visibly irritated and retorted.
That's no way to speak.
But Amanda seemed unfazed. It was fine while I was hospitalized, but it's going to be harder after I'm discharged. I'd like you to live here and help out around the house. Without a hint of remorse, Amanda proposed we move in. We refused on the spot, but Amanda, perhaps due to her previous fracture, started frequently falling and claiming she had broken bones again. Fortunately, there were no fractures, but given the doctor's warning that a real break wasn't out of the question, we had a serious discussion about what to do next. Our current life is disrupted by sudden calls from Amanda, with both of us working. Moreover, Daniel has retired, leaving no income, and ignoring Amanda's demands would unfairly burden Megan. We decided it was better to live together than to inconvenience everyone by continuing as we were, so we reluctantly started living with the in-laws. 3 months into this arrangement. This time, when I went shopping myself, I was hit by a car and fell down. As a result of that accident, I broke my leg. Fortunately, it's not like I can't live my life with a cast and crutches. I decided to respond by having my job switched to remote work. Even though I can use crutches, I can no longer able to do household chores in my daily life. However, my ability to do household chores was compromised, increasing Amanda's workload, for which I apologized. Amanda, I'm sorry for this situation. I'll be relying on you for housework for a while. Amanda, as usual, responded with sarcasm.
Oh, maybe you should have just stayed in the hospital then. I didn't inconvenience Daniel when I was hospitalized. Are you saying I should do the housework with my bad leg?
That's terrible, she replied with his usual sarcasm. This is so annoying because I don't say it in front of Matthew or Daniel. I'm sorry. I'll do what I can within my limits, considering I also have work. Given my fracture, we needed Amanda's cooperation to manage Daniel's care. Seeing this, Amanda said, "Work? What are you doing? Is there even work you can do inside the house? It just looks like you're playing around to me. Hiding in your room, spending money. You're just like a pest, Jessica." After saying that, I started breathing heavily and left the room. After that day, Amanda began to harass me more blatantly. It started with minor comments but escalated over time. Hey, at least carry the dishes. And if you're eating, pay for your food. I don't know what you're doing on that laptop, but you should at least pay for utilities. She would say this every time she saw me, and eventually, I was given clearly leftover food, different from what Daniel and Matthew had. Matthew got angry each time and didn't believe her claims about money. Knowing I couldn't move freely. I'm off to my class, so please do the shopping at the supermarket. Amanda would still ask. On the day I went to the hospital, greeting neighbors as I left the house.
Oh, Jessica. It's not good for someone young like you not to work. You should be helping Amanda out a bit.
I was lectured. It seems Amanda has been spreading rumors in the neighborhood that I'm letting Matthew do all the work while I take it easy. This not only intensified my anger towards Amanda, but also left me frustrated with neighbors who sided with her despite seeing my condition. I decided I couldn't stand living together any longer, even if Amanda and Daniel might rely on Megan after I leave. I've reached my limit. I resolved to find a place and move out as soon as my fracture healed, and I've been enduring since then. One day, Megan came to visit. Daniel got engrossed in a game of chess with a friend. Amanda seemed so happy to have Megan back that she started drinking. It's good that Megan came back. A daughter is the best, after all. Jessica here. Just because she's injured, she wants me to do all the housework. She rambled on. Megan looked a bit troubled. But Jessica is injured, so it can't be helped. And defended me. I was hospitalized with a fracture until recently too. And now she says she's working remotely from home, but who knows what she's really doing? She's just wasting our money. Amanda, perhaps fueled by alcohol, was getting worked up. Megan, trying to prevent the atmosphere from becoming more tense, intervened by sharing some light-hearted stories from recent times. The next morning, Daniel had left early for golf. I had to go to the hospital for rehabilitation, which was a 30-minute drive away. Unable to drive myself, I was dependent on Matthew, who had the day off, to take me. It looks like Amanda and Megan are still sleeping, so let's not wake them.
Right. Mom and Megan had quite a bit to drink last night for the first time in a while, so we'll leave without waking them.
We left the house by 8 a.m. After the rehabilitation session at the hospital, it was nearly 11 a.m. Since Megan is here, why don't we go out for lunch or pick something up? I suggested that, calling Megan on her mobile phone.
That sounds good. You should take it easy once in a while, Jessica. I'll give Megan a call.
Calling Megan on her mobile phone. However, there was no sign of Megan answering her mobile phone. Huh? Maybe she's already left? She's not answering her phone. No, she should still be at home. What's going on? As we returned home, puzzled, we found Amanda drinking coffee in the living room. Amanda, we're back. Upon hearing my voice, Amanda turned pale and was visibly shocked. The next moment, she rushed past Matthew and me, heading straight for my room.
What? What happened?
Following Amanda, we noticed 3 door stoppers fixed on my room's door. Since the door opens outward, placing stoppers on the hallway side would prevent it from opening from the inside. In a panic, Amanda removed the stoppers and flung the door open, releasing a cloud of smoke. The stinging sensation made us cough. And Matthew quickly opened all the windows to ventilate the room. Megan was nowhere to be seen. As Amanda frantically called out Megan's name, there was no sign of her in the room. I entered Matthew's room, supporting myself with my crutch, and made it to the balcony. There, I found Megan sitting curled up.
Matthew! Matthew, it's serious! Megan is here!
Hearing me shout, Matthew came to the balcony. He returned with a chair and helped Megan to move.
Are you okay, Megan?
Megan, are you feeling all right? When asked this, Megan looked pained and said, I thought I was going to die. She choked out. While we were rescuing Megan, Amanda seemed unable to stand and sat down in shock.
Hey, Mom. What exactly is going on here?
Matthew confronted Amanda with a stern tone.
Exactly. Are you listening, Amanda?
Following Matthew's lead, I also pressed for answers, and Megan joined in. Yes, what's all this about? Glaring at her. Amanda mumbled in a small voice. It's because of Jessica. I thought since she's a pest control spree would be. And then, I had no idea Megan was there. Amanda spoke as if she couldn't believe it. I wanted to sleep in the guest room last night, but I couldn't stand Dad's cigarette smell. So, I slept in Jessica's room. Megan replied. I slept on the floor and let Megan have the bed. Responding to that, Amanda said without a hint of remorse. What have I done? I thought Jessica was the one sleeping in the bed. I had no idea Megan was there. Megan added, by the time I realized, the room was filled with smoke and the door wouldn't open. So, I escaped to the balcony. Megan was on the verge of tears. As I patted Megan's back, she started crying in relief. Seeing this, Amanda yelled. It's all because Jessica left without saying anything. I yelled. Unable to forgive her, I glared back at Amanda and retorted. How can you say that without even apologizing? It's obviously wrong to spray insecticide in a room with people. Amanda, infuriated by my response, turned red and lunged at me. Megan then grabbed Amanda's shoulder, pulling her away.
What would you have done if something happened to my baby?
She started shouting.
Baby?
Amanda repeated, as if she hadn't heard at all. Megan had actually come back to her parents-in-law's house to announce her pregnancy. The reason she avoided sleeping in a room that smelled of cigarettes and didn't join Amanda in drinking was all because she was pregnant.
Why didn't you say something so important sooner?
Amanda, furious, confronted Megan. But, Mom, you were really drunk and tipsy yesterday. Even if I told you then, you would have just forgotten. Dad was busy talking with a friend all day, and I wanted to tell both of you properly. That's why I planned to talk about it tonight. Megan started crying again, recalling the events. Matthew, who had been silent, finally spoke up.
This isn't the time to argue. Megan, let's go to the hospital.
Right, this isn't the time for this discussion. I'll get ready. Matthew stood up, saying he'd get the car, and headed to the entrance. I went back to the room to grab Megan's things in her place. It took some time due to my crutch, but there was no conversation between Amanda and Megan during that time.
It's all because of Jessica, because of the pest.
She was still blaming me. Megan, without making eye contact with Amanda, was crying and caressing her belly. At the hospital, we explained the situation and Megan was examined immediately. For now, everything seemed okay, but the doctor advised regular checkups beyond the usual prenatal care, believing the quick escape to the balcony likely prevented any harm. Megan was praised for her quick thinking in such a panic. Back home, Megan reported the hospital's findings to Amanda. There were no issues at the hospital. Amanda, relieved. That's good to hear. But it all started because of Jessica. If she hadn't disappeared like that. Megan, it's not my fault. I was just trying to deal with a pest, you understand? Amanda pleaded with Megan. But Megan looked at her coldly. Even if your target was Jessica, it's wrong to trap someone and use such strong insecticide. There might be no effect on the baby for now, but the fact that I was nearly killed is real. I'll be taking legal action. Megan shook off Amanda's pleading hands. How absurd, suing your own parent. It's exaggerated to think insecticide could kill a person. Jessica, say something. It's all because of you, after all. Take responsibility. Amanda then demanded that I convince Megan. At this point, I was so appalled I was speechless. Facing Amanda.
How can you not even offer an apology at this point? What kind of person treats someone as a pest and actually attempts to kill them with insecticide? I can't live with someone like that any longer.
I said, Matthew then also. What Mom did is unforgivable. It's tough on Dad, but we're moving out. Saying this, he left the room to start packing. We prioritized leaving the house, shaking off a clinging Amanda. That same day, Matthew and I packed our belongings and went to a hotel, deciding to look for a new place to live. We informed Daniel that we were moving out and wouldn't be returning home. Despite his initial disbelief, citing Amanda's usual behavior towards me and hearing a similar account from Megan, Daniel had to accept the truth. Soon after, Amanda and Daniel's life fell apart. Amanda, who had misunderstood me as an unemployed shut-in, didn't realize that my income was comparable to Matthew's, and I had been contributing a significant amount to the household expenses. Despite repeatedly telling Amanda about my remote work and financial contributions, including most of the in-laws' house expenses, she never believed me, thinking all the money came from Matthew. No matter how many times Matthew explained, she wouldn't understand, and despite feeling bad for Daniel, we were preparing to leave due to the untenable situation. That's why we were able to quickly pack and move to a hotel. After we left, Amanda reached out for financial help, but we ignored all her calls. About a month after we moved out, Matthew, concerned about Daniel, visited the in-laws' house on his day off. To his surprise, Amanda was gone, and Daniel was living alone. Where's Mom? Daniel explained. Amanda and I are divorced now. After what she did to Jessica, who was nothing but kind to us. And Megan has cut ties, saying she'd never visit again if Mom was here. Daniel recounted the events following our departure. Amanda had resisted the divorce.
Why should we divorce? It's unbelievable. Dealing with pests is normal, isn't it?
She stubbornly refused to sign the divorce papers initially.
As long as Amanda is here, Megan won't visit, and we could be sued.
Daniel, facing potential legal action and Megan's estrangement, pressed Amanda.
Fine, but make sure the property division is fair.
She eventually agreed, packing her belongings and leaving. Megan received all the money from the property division as a settlement to avoid filing a police report. After leaving, Amanda moved into a cheap apartment nearby but became isolated from her neighbors. When Daniel evicted Amanda, he said,
"What Amanda did is no different from attempted murder. Megan's survival was purely by chance."
Daniel had shared with others that what Amanda did was akin to attempted murder, only lucky that Megan survived. This story turned Amanda into a pariah, shunned by neighbors and ignored even when she greeted them. Her participation in local activities was met with cold shoulders, leading her to flee to a distant place with no connections. My leg fully healed, allowing a return to normal life. Fortunately, Megan and her baby faced no adverse effects, and she later gave birth to a healthy child. Megan occasionally visits Daniel with her grandchild, enjoying a peaceful life without Amanda's return.
You should just keep quiet and provide the money.
3 years into my marriage. Invited by my in-laws whom I hadn't seen since a family meeting, I arrived at a fancy restaurant only to find no seat for me. As I attempted to call a server, my mother-in-law, Sarah, stopped me.
"Did you really think you'd dine with us as a wife? How presumptuous. Be aware that your role is to provide money."
I'm Jennifer, a 31-year-old. I'm a nurse. I met my husband, Robert, through a friend's introduction. Curious and adventurous, Robert often took me to various places, making even my indoor inclinations enjoyable. Although I'm an indoor person, going out with Robert was fun and the time passed quickly. We started dating right away and got married after 2 years of dating. We are currently in our 3rd year of marriage. Robert works in a factory, but his income has decreased dramatically because he recently stopped working night shifts. We can't live on Robert's salary, so I pay for our living expenses and save Robert's salary. She lives with Robert and they don't have any children yet. 3 years have passed since the university hospital I work at has been so busy with emergency surgeries and night shifts that it has been difficult to find time for my husband and I. My mom tells me that it's time to think about my child. I wonder if the parents-in-law want to see their grandchildren's faces soon, but I can't imagine what they think. Because I have never met my parents-in-law since I got married. When Robert went to the in-laws' house, I was told that I didn't have to come even though I said I would go with him, so it became common for Robert to go home alone. Robert is usually busy with housework and work, and because of his job, he doesn't get much time off, so instead of going to the in-laws' house and going home right away, he was deeply concerned about whether it would be better for Robert to just go home and take it easy. It seemed like I was telling my parents-in-law that I was too busy with work to go back to the in-laws' house. We haven't had any contact for the past 3 years, other than occasionally hearing about the current status of parents-in-law through Robert. Robert used to do the housework with me when we first got married, but he gradually stopped doing the housework, and now I do everything. When I get home from work, I complain to Robert who doesn't do any housework and watches TV and laughs, but my complaints are always ignored. Since Robert leaves the house earlier and comes back later, I have told him many times that I want him to at least take in the laundry, but when he comes back, he sees the laundry just as it is. Sighing, I bring in the cold, damp clothes and start preparing dinner. Our meals often involve grilling or oven use. When Robert stopped doing housework, he learned to cook in the oven, which allowed him to cook at the same time, in order to free up time. While I'm waiting for the food to bake, I fold the laundry and clean the bathroom. Meanwhile, Robert is playing games and reading books and doesn't show any signs of helping out. Until about a year ago, I used to ask him to help me, but he wouldn't budge, saying that someone he was interested in could do it. I fought back and waited until Robert moved, but the dust was accumulating and mold was growing in the bathroom, so in the end I couldn't stand it anymore and started moving. One day, after a night shift, Robert, getting ready for work, mentioned, "Jennifer, we're going to that restaurant this Sunday," he said. The restaurant he referred to was a fancy place about a 20-minute walk from our home. "What's the occasion? Why a restaurant all of a sudden?" "Actually, Mom and Dad want to have a meal together. It's been a while, and you can come, right?" Despite being exhausted and preferring sleep over dining out, I couldn't decline an invitation from my in-laws. Especially since it had been a long time since our last family meeting. So, I agreed to go. On the promised Sunday, I managed to adjust my work schedule to make it in time and headed to the restaurant with Robert. The staff seemed puzzled when we mentioned our reservation. I excused myself to the restroom, leaving Robert talking to the staff. I could hear bits of their conversation about seating but didn't get the details. Upon returning, Robert dismissed it as nothing when I inquired about their discussion. "Robert, Jennifer. It's been a while. Please, take a seat." Sarah appeared strong-willed but was a beautiful woman.
"Dad, Mom, it's good to see you both looking well."
Robert promptly took his seat. "Joseph, Sarah, it's been a while. Thank you for having us today." I greeted my mother-in-law Sarah and father-in-law Joseph with nervous politeness after not seeing them for so long. As I tried to take a seat, I noticed there were only 3 chairs, with no place for me. It seems we're 1 chair short. I'll just check with the staff." I thought it was a mistake on the store's part, so I went to call for a staff member, but Sarah said, "Jennifer, wait. There was never a seat for you to begin with," she said to me with a sharp look.
"What do you mean?"
Seeing my confusion, Sarah raised an eyebrow and said, "Did you really think, as a wife, you'd be dining with us? How presumptuous. Jennifer, you're only needed for settling the bill. After all, a wallet doesn't need to eat, does it?" he said with a wicked smile. Shocked by Sarah's attitude, I looked at Robert, seeking support, but found him sharing a malicious grin with Joseph. It dawned on me then that everyone but me was in on this arrangement. Feeling repulsed by this so-called family, I quickly responded, "Understood," and left the room. As I was leaving, "Just keep your wallet open and stay quiet," I heard. As I was passing the reception to leave, the staff member who had shown me to the room called out to me, "Your husband mentioned you'd be taking care of the bill before leaving." I was stopped. I realized then that Robert's conversation with the server when I went to the restroom was about this. "I've told them that. There's been a change of plans, one of the 3 will pay." And did not pay. I didn't settle the bill and rushed out of the restaurant, ran home, packed my belongings into a large suitcase, and quickly made my way to the station. My parents' home is about an hour from the nearest station. On my way, I called my mom to let her know I was coming home. She was surprised by the sudden news but sensed something was wrong and assured me, "We'll talk properly when you get back," she said to me. Hearing my mom's voice helped me regain my composure, despite being on the verge of breaking down from sadness, frustration, and anger. When I arrived at the nearest station to my parents' home, my mom was there to pick me up. We loaded my suitcase into the car and headed home. After arriving and sharing the day's events and my life up to that point, my dad,
"I didn't raise Jennifer to be a slave for someone's family. Cut ties with them,"
visibly angry, said. My dad is well known in our neighborhood as a loving husband who always treasures my mom. He would immediately change into an apron upon returning from work, cook with mom, clean, and finish household chores during weekdays to maximize family time on weekends. Growing up watching my parents, I aspired to have a similar family life. Robert used to help with household chores and seemed considerate when we were dating, so I believed we could build a family like my parents. However, that lifestyle changed within 3 months into our marriage. My mom gently asked me, "What do you want to do, Jennifer?" My mind was already made up. I want a divorce. Upon hearing this, my mom hugged me tightly. "You've done well holding on until now." She rubbed my back. Something within me snapped, and I broke down crying in my mom's arms. About 3 hours after returning home, my phone wouldn't stop ringing. All calls from Robert. The missed calls had exceeded 30. Reluctantly answering, Robert's voice came through, loud enough as if he was about to burst through the phone.
Jennifer, why did you leave without paying? Now I had to cover it, in front of Mom too. How could you not handle this properly?
He yelled so loudly that my parents, who were a little far away, could hear him. I was so astounded by his reaction that I simply said, "I'm going to divorce you, Robert." And as I was about to hang up,
Jennifer, wait. Please reconsider. There's a reason for this.
Confronted with the ultimatum of divorce, a panicked Robert began to reveal the truth behind the dinner. "Actually, Mom has been insisting I bring you over. But I lied to you and took money behind your back. I thought if you visited, they'd realize the lie and stop giving me money. That would make things difficult for us financially." Robert's lie was that I wasn't earning well, and that we were in dire need of financial assistance. He admitted to spending the money received on in-game purchases. Sarah, who had wanted to lecture the supposedly non-earning me, would have discovered Robert's lie if we had met. To save his skin, Robert prevented me from visiting, which Sarah misconstrued as Robert prioritizing a useless me over her. It's said that Sarah is the kind of person who isn't satisfied unless she's the best at everything. Sarah, who can't stand not being the priority, was infuriated by Robert's repeated prioritization of me by allowing only him to visit. To appease Sarah, Robert asked how he could prove his loyalty to her. Sarah suggested that making me pay for a fancy dinner would suffice, leading to the planned dinner. I had no choice. "Understand, Jennifer. Without you, I can't make it on my own." Thinking such a reason would be acceptable to me was beyond belief. Despite reduced income, Robert didn't seek a better job or work extra. He just relied on his parents' money, spending it all on his hobbies, unrelated to our household needs. Essentially, he was only looking out for himself. How could I possibly understand that? I felt disdain and disgust towards Robert, unable to envision a life with him.
Sorry, but I can't understand that at all. If you won't agree to a divorce, I'll get a lawyer involved.
After hanging up, a frantic Robert sought counsel from Sarah and Joseph. "Mom, Dad, Jennifer's been hiding her income, buying lots of designer bags. She even mentioned divorce earlier." Robert once again lied to gain sympathy from Sarah and Joseph.
What? That woman deceived my dear Robert and made him pay for the restaurant without even apologizing? Unforgivable.
Sarah, visibly enraged, distorted her face with anger.
Such a woman isn't suitable for Robert. Divorce her immediately.
Joseph was also furious. To proceed with the divorce, I met with Robert, Sarah, and Joseph to get the paperwork started. It had been about 2 weeks since the restaurant incident, as coordinating our schedules took some time due to my busy work life. "Please sign here." I laid the divorce papers on the table.
Jennifer, is it okay for you to act like this?
Remember, Dad and Mom are here.
If you apologize now, we can forget about the divorce.
Robert, having enlisted Sarah and Joseph as his allies, spoke as if he were the one initiating the divorce.
My decision hasn't changed, and I have no intention of apologizing.
Could you please sign this? Disliking Robert and his parents, I didn't hesitate to push for their signatures. Sarah, glaring at me.
What a hateful person. I can't believe someone like you was Robert's wife.
Joseph, patting Robert's shoulder.
Good that you're getting rid of such a wife.
Wait a minute. Robert seemed surprised by my reaction, scrambling to stop the divorce, but Sarah and Joseph urged him to sign quickly, and he reluctantly did. Thanks to Sarah and Joseph, I was able to finalize the divorce smoothly and felt relieved. I couldn't believe he thought bringing Sarah and Joseph, who were pro-divorce, would convince me. I filed the divorce papers that day and officially became strangers with Robert and the others. I couldn't grasp Robert's way of thinking until the end, doubting how I could have been married to such a person for 3 years. Robert seemed to have been complaining about the divorce at work, where his colleagues said,
Heard about Robert? Acts like it's all his wife's fault, but anyone who hears that would divorce him in a heartbeat. It's scary how he thinks he's not in the wrong. Clearly, Robert's the one to blame. I used to like him, but I was so wrong. I'm planning to keep my distance now. Despite being an adult, Robert, who still gets an allowance from his parents and was dumped by his wife, is now isolated and viewed coldly. The rumors spread, and when Sarah and Joseph heard the truth, they called me. I answered the phone without knowing it was from Sarah and Joseph, as it was an unknown number. Sorry for calling out of the blue, Jennifer. I got your number from Robert. We heard the real story through rumors and checked with Robert. He was lying, wasn't he? I'm so sorry for what happened. We've scolded Robert. Joseph and I want to apologize in person. Would you meet with us? I was apologized to by Sarah, but her actions at the restaurant, despite being deceived by Robert, were unforgivable. I'm glad you understand the truth. But an apology over this phone call will suffice. I decided not to mend my relationship with Sarah and Joseph and to keep my distance. Robert is now isolated at work and complaining in the neighborhood that Sarah and Joseph scolding him is my fault. This only further highlighted his erratic behavior, leading the local community to avoid him as well, leaving him to lead a lonely, squalid existence. With financial support from Sarah and Joseph cut off and no more income from me, Robert found himself in a tight financial spot. His lack of domestic skills meant he couldn't even prepare simple meals, leading him to wander restaurants in hopes of obtaining leftover food, as shared by a once-close neighbor. Since I no longer needed to support or care for Robert, I started working more without having to hold back on my job. As a result, I received a promotion and was able to move to a better house. Patients began to notice a positive change in me, often inquiring if something good had happened. Upon learning of my divorce, they started offering to introduce me to their grandchildren or sons, more so than before my marriage. My weekends are now spent shopping with friends or sleeping in as much as I like, enjoying a stress-free lifestyle. Thank you for always taking care of my husband. I wrote this with a bright red permanent marker on the back of my husband who was passed out drunk. He wouldn't think that I knew about his daily affairs with younger women, under the guise of working late. But I knew everything. Suppressing the rage that made me want to claw at him, I left that message. It was a declaration of war to my husband's mistress. My husband, Darren, and I, Anita, both 38, got married 3 years ago. Both working, I mostly handle the housework since I work from home. We don't have kids, but I thought we were happily living together, a thought only I seemed to have. I'll be working late tomorrow too. Don't wait up for dinner, go to sleep first. Darren, who started working late suddenly about 3 months ago. The frequency increased over time, and he started spending nights at the office twice a week. You've been working late a lot recently. You never used to. The economy's better, and we're busier. That's good, right? Yes, take care. I believed Darren's words and saw him off. But not only did Darren come home late, his attitude towards me grew colder. He used to invite me out on his days off, but now he barely spoke to me. How about we go out today? It's nice weather. I'm tired, maybe some other time. Then, let's watch a movie at home together. Not in the mood. I want some alone time, go away. Darren, barely lifting his face from his mobile phone, spoke with annoyance. On bad days, except for bathroom and meal times, he wouldn't leave his room all day. Is this all just stress from work? I was worried about Darren's changed behavior, but one day, my concern turned to suspicion. That day, Darren came home at 1 a.m., and I was still awake due to work. Anita, you're still up? I was working. Huh? The moment I took Darren's suit, I smelled an unfamiliar scent. Why does your suit smell like perfume? When I asked, Darren's face stiffened slightly as he sniffed his clothes. Then, he looked annoyed. I don't smell anything. You have hay fever, so you wouldn't notice. Yeah. Maybe it's from a female coworker who wears too much perfume. Must have rubbed off. You notice the perfume despite your severe hay fever?
Well, yeah. She wears a lot. Darren's words sounded like a hasty, thoughtless excuse.
Were you that close to her to smell it so strongly? I helped her when she almost fell.
Darren licked his lips while saying this. A habit he had when lying.
Really? You're not hiding anything from me? Stop nagging. Don't snoop around like a controlling woman.
When I pressed him, Darren glared and stormed out of the living room.
Is he really cheating?
The next day, Darren left for work without breakfast and didn't return until after 9 p.m., ignoring all calls and messages from me. He only came back after midnight.
Welcome home.
I was worried. You didn't say you'd be working late today.
I was swamped with work. I tried to contact you several times. At least reply to my messages. I told you I was busy. I'm going to sleep.
Darren hastily retreated to the bedroom and slammed the door shut. Lately, even when going to bed, he turns his back to me, avoiding any contact.
I just want to have a calm conversation.
I approached the bedroom door and was about to knock.
But then, I heard voices from inside and stopped.
I just got home. I want to see you again, even though we just met.
I want to see you too. When can you come next?
Maybe I'll try to make it tomorrow too. I love you. Listening closely, I realized Darren was on a speakerphone call with a woman.
He barely talks to me.
Unable to hold back, I knocked and tried to listen through the door.
Who are you calling at this hour? Why hide it? What are you doing, Anita?
Angered, Darren swung the door open forcefully, knocking me down as I stood close by.
It hurts. What are you doing? Anita, how dare you eavesdrop on my call? What a nerve! I was just curious who you were talking to at this time. I was discussing work with a colleague. But it didn't sound like that. Shut up. Always saying presumptuous things. I'll show you.
Darren roughly picked me up and threw me outside the front door. Then he quickly shut the door and locked it.
What are you doing? Open the door. Annoying woman in the house is just a nuisance. Stay quiet out there. This is too much, no matter what. It's your fault. Reflect on it spending the night on the ground.
With those words, Darren's footsteps faded away into the house. Thrown out empty-handed, I couldn't even contact the apartment management. I had no choice but to spend the night at the entrance. The next morning, Darren came out before going to work and tossed the keys at me roughly.
Did you reflect? If you learned your lesson, don't ever meddle again.
After saying only what he wanted, Darren left for work without hearing my side.
To be treated this badly. I can't stay silent. I'll gather evidence.
A few days later, I decided to stake out his office as he claimed to be working late. Exiting the office at the regular time, Darren walked in the opposite direction of our home.
Where is he going?
Following him, he met up with a young, cute woman. I was shocked to see them walk arm in arm, boldly. I filmed them with my mobile phone as they entered a high-end French restaurant. When he dines with me, it's always at a family restaurant. The difference in treatment was both sad and frustrating. Suppressing my swirling emotions, I continued to watch. After their meal, they headed straight to a hotel.
Now I have perfect evidence.
I followed Darren several more times, gathering more evidence. It turned out, on days he said he was working late, he spent hours in a hotel, and nights he claimed to be staying over at work, he was at his mistress's house.
I'll be at the office all night working tomorrow.
Every day must be really tough. I bought some good wine today, how about we relax a bit? Since being thrown outside, I've been compliant, which seemed to please Darren, who happily agreed to a drink in the evening. Then he guzzled down the expensive wine and quickly got drunk.
Thank you for always taking care of my husband.
It's perfect. I wrote this message with bright red pen on Darren's back, partly as a declaration of war to his mistress. It seemed to have an effect because around 11 p.m. the next night, I received a call from Darren, who never initiates contact. Did he realize? Is this about the mistress? Wondering if it was Darren or his mistress, I nervously pressed the call button on my mobile phone.
I'm so sorry.
A woman's voice. I didn't recognize whose voice it was. So loud it crackled through the phone, making me pull it away from my ear. What?
I'm really sorry.
The mistress sounded panicked, not like she was making a hasty apology. I was surprised. This was not what I had expected.
You didn't know about him? Yes. I wouldn't have been with him if I knew he was married.
That's unfortunate. Her name is Lorna, a 28-year-old receptionist at Darren's client company.
Deceiving a woman like this is the worst. I'm in shock. He even proposed to me. What? We were planning our wedding, looking at venues. I was so excited until I found the message in the shower room.
She scrubbed off the message with a body brush as she would wash his back, pretending to feel sick, and went to bed early.
I panicked thinking I couldn't marry him. After he slept, I checked his phone and saw your messages, realizing you were his wife.
I didn't think you were unaware. I'm sorry for scaring you.
No, I should apologize for what I did, even unknowingly.
No need to apologize. You were promised marriage, you're a victim too. Betrayed by Darren, and to think he deceived such a genuine girl. I've never felt so disgusted with someone. In my heart, I decided to end my relationship with Darren.
I'm going to divorce him. You should break up with him too. I want to, but I transferred about $10,000 to his account for our wedding expenses.
Really?
If our marriage was a lie, where's that money?
Maybe he really planned to marry you?
I don't want to marry such a terrible person. I want to get my money back and cut ties.
That's better. But let's make him truly reflect on his actions. I couldn't let this go unchallenged. Thinking of a plan, I came up with an idea. Can you help me with something?
Anything.
Actually, I have a secret I haven't told Darren. She was obviously angry and shared a secret she kept from Darren. Thus, we joined forces to teach Darren a lesson. We secretly communicated and meticulously prepared. Over the next 2 weeks, the day of our retaliation arrived finally.
I'll be working late again today. Might even stay overnight.
You're always working hard. Take care not to overdo it. I smiled and saw Darren off, then contacted Lorna and went to her place to wait. Then, around 6 p.m., the doorbell of her house rang.
I'm home. Work was exhausting today.
Welcome back, Darren.
Huh?
When I appeared from the living room, Darren jumped as if he had seen a ghost. Dinner? Bath? Or divorce? Smiling, I thrust the divorce papers at him, making Darren drop his bag in panic.
Anita, why are you here?
Let's sit down and talk about it. Come, let's go to the living room.
What are you plotting? You didn't do anything to Lorna, did you?
Just come quickly.
Okay.
Seemingly shocked by my loud voice since I was a compliant recently, Darren hurried into the living room. There, Lorna sat on the sofa with a broad smile.
Lorna, what is this all about?
That's our line. How could you promise marriage to me when you have a wife?
Well,
Let's hear the full story, shall we? I sat next to Lorna and Darren sat in front of us. I began interrogating Darren. He finally seemed to give in.
Lorna was just a bit of fun. I was interested in younger girls.
Gross.
You're attractive too. But you know, eating the same thing every time gets boring, right? Sometimes you want to try something different.
I'm disgusted. And why were you cold to me if that's the case?
That's because I thought if I was cold to you, you'd be more devoted.
I was too stunned by his reasoning to speak. Taking my place, Lorna glared at Darren. If you weren't serious about me, why did you promise to marry me?
I thought marriage meant you'd give me money.
Give me back my money.
That's impossible. I've already spent it all.
Are you kidding? What did you spend it on?
I treated colleagues to slightly expensive lunches to be liked at work. And what else? I bought expensive coats and shoes to impress clients. To think you spent my savings on such things. I'll never forgive you. Lorna muttered in a low voice. I'll have you arrested for marriage fraud. What? Isn't that an overreaction for something like this? Additionally, I'm demanding $30,000 in compensation and $10,000 for the savings you spent. Wait a minute. This is too harsh.
Darren's face turned pale with panic. Watching him, I couldn't help but laugh at the absurdity.
Anita, say something. Just accept the arrest quietly. I meant to Lorna. If your husband gets arrested, it'll be trouble, right?
Not at all. I'm getting divorced anyway.
Eh?
At the moment Darren heard the word divorce from me, his face turned even paler.
Divorce? You're joking, right?
Why would I stay married to a cheating fraudster like you?
You think you can live on your own after being a comfortable housewife all this time?
I'm not just a housewife, I work from home. I can live perfectly fine without you.
You mean you were actually working at home? I thought you were just pretending.
Darren looked at me with surprise. I'm also demanding $30,000 in alimony for your infidelity.
I can't pay anymore. What am I supposed to do if the amount increases?
You'll have to work hard, I guess. You'll probably be fired from your current job though.
Eh?
Lorna is actually the daughter of the vice president of your client company.
What? I thought she was just a receptionist.
That was the secret she hadn't told Darren. I kept it hidden because I thought it'd be difficult to date if you knew my position. I've already informed her father about everything. Of course, your company knows too. I had already reported to Darren's boss about his marriage fraud with the receptionist and that a police report was filed, and his arrest was imminent.
But I'm capable at work. Even if I get arrested, I'll have chances to keep working.
There's no way they'll keep you. As soon as the facts are confirmed, you'll be disciplined by the company. Almost certainly fired.
That's impossible.
Darren held his head, making a face as if to say I'm in despair. It was nauseating.
Lorna, let's get married after I divorce Anita. Then it won't be fraud, right?
I refuse.
Anita, let's start over. We can overcome this and become a real couple.
Your jokes should be only that silly face of yours. Lorna and I kicked out the pitifully clinging Darren from the house and celebrated with a high five. Later, Darren and I divorced, and I demanded the planned alimony. Darren was found guilty of marriage fraud from Lorna's report. She also claimed alimony and damages. After being fired and burdened with a huge debt, it's hard for a criminal to find employment. Even his parents disowned him, and he now lives and works at a quite terrible workplace. Lorna and I became friends. We occasionally enjoy drinks together and have fun. I'm Jessica, a 38-year-old office worker. I have been married to my husband, Brandon, for 5 years now. However, we've been struggling to have children. Being the eldest and only son, Brandon has always been under pressure from his mother, Chloe, to have a boy since we got married. These days, few people care about the gender of their children, and either a son or daughter can be an heir. Brandon himself doesn't care about the gender and says there's no rush to have children. But Chloe sees me as an adversary and always tells me when Brandon's not around. A woman who can't have children is useless in this family. If you can't have one, you might as well leave. Her words have hurt me deeply. I'm sorry, Chloe, but honestly, your words are very pressuring. I wish you wouldn't say such things. I finally gathered the courage to express my feeling to Chloe. But she didn't understand it at all and became even more oppressive, telling me not to defy her. I was shocked. I never expected such words from her. At first, I endured it because she's Brandon's mother and I didn't want to cause any trouble. But enduring Chloe's sarcasm while undergoing fertility treatments was mentally taxing, and my health started to decline. Realizing I couldn't hide it anymore, I confided in Brandon. Furious, Brandon sternly warned Chloe, which stopped her surprise visits to our apartment for a while, but she continued to hurl insults daily through WhatsApp. Then one day, I found out I was pregnant at the fertility clinic. The first sight of the fetal ultrasound filled me with indescribable emotions. When I showed Brandon the ultrasound at home, we both cried tears of joy. But our happiness was short-lived as I remembered a significant problem. Chloe. Telling her about the pregnancy would surely lead to her frequent visits, insisting that pregnancy isn't an illness, telling me to move around, or bragging about her own experiences. The doctor advised me not to overexert myself until a heartbeat is confirmed, so I was torn about what to do. After discussing with Brandon, we decided I should stay at my parents' house for a while. If I'm at my parents' house, even if I'm not feeling well, my parents are there, and Chloe won't make a surprise visit to my parents' house. It's close to my workplace and Chloe wouldn't barge in there. I called my mother right away, explaining about the pregnancy in Chloe, and decided to return home for a while. Brandon drove me to my parents' house, where they were overjoyed about my pregnancy. After greeting my parents, Brandon returned to our apartment. Being back at my parents' house, away from Chloe, brought me peace of mind. Soon after, morning sickness hit, and I spent days in bed. At work, my pale face raised concerns, and my boss suggested me to take a break, which I gratefully accepted. Many women at my job, including those who have undergone fertility treatments, understood my situation. Their support was comforting. Other than severe morning sickness, my pregnancy was uneventful, and the baby grew healthily. Feeling the first kicks was indescribably touching, and I lovingly caressed my belly every day. In fact, Brandon and I had already planned to move to a bigger house once we had a child. The reason is, our apartment was getting old, and while it's fine for just the two of us, it felt inconvenient for raising a child. We had set various criteria like proximity to stations, hospitals, and shopping facilities, and were searching accordingly. Then, Brandon suddenly sent me a photo. It was of a new high-rise condominium near the station. The area around the condo had everything needed for living, like commercial facilities and hospitals, and it was close to nurseries and schools, making it convenient for kids in the future. Completion is expected next month, and I casually entered a lottery for it. Surprisingly, we won. If you don't like it, we can just transfer it to someone else. Jessica, you can see it and decide. Hearing this, I immediately opened their website, was taken aback by the stylish design of the rooms, and exclaimed, "What?" The latest system kitchen, a bathroom with a sauna. Moreover, the unit we won was on the top floor of the 30-story building. The view from the window was amazing. I was a bit hesitant about the price, but Brandon works at a top-tier company, and with our salaries, we could afford it, so I decided to sign the contract for this condominium. Of course, I couldn't keep the purchase of a new high-rise condominium from my in-laws. I talked about it through Austin, my father-in-law. Austin said, "It's impressive that you young ones bought a condominium. If you need anything, I'm here to help." However, Chloe was not happy about this. When she found out we bought a high-rise condo, she was upset that we weren't living with her. Then, an incident happened. A week after moving in, Chloe suddenly visited. As usual, she went around the room complaining, but I entertained her with a smile. Then, suddenly, Chloe said she dropped her keys near the emergency stairs.
What? Why did you drop your keys by the emergency stairs? Don't tell me you climbed all the way up here?
I said, but apparently, she had dropped them while checking where the emergency stairs were, just in case. I went to the emergency stairs instead of Chloe to get the keys. At that moment,
"I'm taking this house."
I was suddenly pushed from behind, lost my balance, and fell down the stairs.
Ouch! Help, somebody!
Unable to stand due to pain and shock, I suddenly felt warm water flowing around my feet. Realizing I had probably broken my water, I thought about calling an ambulance, but since I had hit my head hard, I lost consciousness. When I woke up, I was in a hospital bed. Brandon was there, looking worriedly at me.
"Jessica, Are you okay?
Brandon asked, visibly shaken, as I woke up.
Where am I? What happened to me?
I was still confused from just waking up and had a fuzzy consciousness from the head injury. When I touched my stomach, I felt something was off. My stomach, which was big until recently, had shrunk. Realizing this, I felt the blood drain from my face.
Hey, why is my stomach like this? Where's my baby? Where did my baby go?
I asked Brandon. Then Brandon quietly began to speak. The baby in your belly is. The moment I heard those words, I couldn't stop my tears and began crying out loud in the hospital room. Someone on the same floor found me, noticing the emergency staircase door left open. When they went to close it, they found me collapsed and hurriedly called an ambulance. Brandon asked why I approached the emergency stairs, so I explained everything about my interaction with Chloe. I was mentally harassed by Chloe when Brandon wasn't around before, which had once caused me to fall ill. Because of that, Brandon instructed me to always carry a voice recorder. Of course, I started recording the moment Chloe showed up unannounced. After listening to the voice recorder, it was clear that Chloe was the culprit. Brandon was furious to learn that his own mother had done such a thing. Then, a call came in on Brandon's mobile phone from a relative. On the call, Brandon heard a shocking fact. It seemed Chloe, thinking the baby had died, was telling relatives while crying. Oh, my poor sweet grandchild has gone to heaven. It's so sad. It's because Jessica, even though she's pregnant, went out riding a bicycle. She was making up absurd stories. However, Austin, who was present, had heard nothing like that from either me or Brandon and was looking at Chloe in utter disbelief. It seemed impossible that Austin didn't know anything about it. And the idea of a woman in her 9th month of pregnancy riding a bicycle. That's why the relative called Brandon. It was unbelievable. Then Brandon, taking the voice recorder, said, Jessica, let me borrow this for a bit. Can you leave the rest to me? He then left the hospital room. As Brandon left, my parents arrived. After I explained everything, they were both shocked and angry. I decided to trust Brandon and wait in the hospital room for the outcome. Meanwhile, Brandon met with the relative who had called him. It turned out Chloe was gathering relatives at her house, explaining the incident. Of course, her words were nonsense, and she was just trying to make herself look innocent. Some relatives believed Chloe and wept, while others were skeptical and viewed her with suspicion. Suddenly, Brandon burst in, causing Chloe to look at him in surprise. Huh? Brandon, why are you here? You were supposed to be with Jessica. She needs you. It's so sad about the baby. I was looking forward to its birth. Chloe said, even feigning tears. At that moment, something snapped in Brandon.
Enough, Mom. I know everything. You pushed Jessica down the emergency stairs,
he said, pulling out the voice recorder in front of the relatives. Everyone was shocked to hear the conversation recorded so vividly. Who heard the voice could not hide their surprise.
Is this true?
Austin, whose face turned pale due to the shock, asked Chloe.
No, that's not true. This is nonsense. I didn't go near the emergency stairs.
Even after hearing the recording, Chloe insisted she hadn't done it. However, there was a security camera nearby, and its footage would surely show me and Chloe entering the emergency stairwell. When Brandon mentioned this, Chloe, who had been speaking fluently until then, turned pale and began to tremble.
How awful. We're family, aren't we? How dare you shame your own mother like this?
Chloe clung to Brandon, insisting she was innocent and that it was Jessica who had slipped on her own. Even if that were true, leaving someone who had fallen and not helping them is questionable. However, the relatives who had already heard the voice recording did not believe Chloe's story. Instead, they urged her to go to the police and turn herself in.
It's not me. I'm not the bad one. You understand, don't you? You know I'm not the kind of person who would do this. Prove it in front of everyone.
Chloe desperately appealed to Austin to affirm her innocence. But no one believed Chloe's story anymore. Soon, the police arrived, and from the audio and the subsequent security camera footage, it was clear that Chloe was the perpetrator. She was taken to the police station and arrested. The reason she did this was because the baby was a girl. Chloe had always been fixated on having a grandson, and when she found out the baby in the womb was a girl, she was disappointed. She thought that by pretending this baby never existed, she could try for a boy next time. When I heard this from the police, my head went blank with shock. Despite all that had happened, the baby grew healthily in an incubator and was discharged after 2 months. A few days after coming home from the hospital, Austin visited our apartment to apologize for the incident. He said that he and Chloe had divorced, that their house was sold, and he was going to move back to his family home. It was sad that the house where Brandon had grown up was gone, but since Austin wasn't to blame, we told him he was always welcome to visit. We regularly let Austin see his granddaughter after that. He adored his first grandchild and played with her with such kindness in his eyes. 3 years later, our second child, a boy, was born. Our daughter, now a big sister, couldn't wait to take care of her brother and was always by his side. Watching them was heartwarming, and every day was filled with happiness. But that happiness was disrupted by a visit from someone. The doorbell rang repeatedly, and when I checked the monitor, to my surprise, it was Chloe. I thought I would never see her again, and seeing her brought back memories of that day, making me feel nauseous.
What do you want now? I have no intention of seeing you again. Please leave.
I said, but Chloe wouldn't listen. Apparently, Chloe had fallen ill, struggling daily with her health and finding it difficult to go to the hospital without a car. She had divorced Austin, and their house was now just an empty lot. She had no one else to turn to for help. Shockingly, Chloe knew I had given birth to a boy. She had apparently seen us in town, noticing Brandon holding our son. To Chloe, it was the long-desired grandson. She was determined to live with us and make the boy fond of her.
So you finally became a proper woman, giving birth to a boy. When you were pregnant with a girl, I was so disappointed in you. But now that you've had a boy, let's forget the past and live together, shall we?
For a moment, I doubted my own ears. Live together after all that? Impossible.
What are you talking about? After what you did, living together is impossible. Leave now, or I'll call the police.
Unfortunately, Brandon was at work at this crucial time. In distress, I immediately called Austin. He was supposed to visit the apartment today to see his son and daughter. With trembling hands, I called Austin. It turned out he was already near the apartment, so he hurried over. When Austin arrived, Chloe exclaimed in surprise. We couldn't argue in the entrance of the apartment building, as it would disturb others. But I had no intention of letting Chloe, whom we had cut ties with, into our apartment again. I gave Chloe an ultimatum, telling her I would call the police if she really didn't leave. Realizing her wish wouldn't be fulfilled, Chloe started to create a scene at the entrance and began arguing with Austin. Troubled, I contacted Brandon at work. After hearing the situation, Brandon called the police, and they soon arrived at our apartment. The police, understanding the situation, took Chloe away in a police car. As the commotion was in a conspicuous place, several residents of the apartment witnessed it. I felt sorry for causing inconvenience to many people. Later, after Brandon returned home, we discussed the situation with Austin and decided to move. As long as we lived here, Chloe would surely come back. We couldn't risk something happening to the children next time. Besides, Austin, though he said he had gone back to his family home, was living alone since his parents had passed away. Our daughter liked Austin and had previously expressed a desire to live with him. Austin is a kind person, and leaving him alone at his age worried us. When we proposed living together, Austin was very happy, despite everything that had happened. Afterwards, we bought a used property in the next town. Though it was second-hand, the house itself was very nice, and the surrounding environment was good too. Living in a high-rise was nice, but raising children in a place surrounded by nature seemed better. Right after moving, my daughter and Austin went to a mountain to hunt for beetles. Seeing them so happy made me feel that deciding to live together and choosing this place was the right decision. Once a month, we invite my parents over, and we all enjoy a home party, leading a happy life. Meanwhile, according to someone I was close with at the high-rise apartment, Chloe, undeterred, visited the high-rise again. But when told we had moved and she couldn't find out where, she left disappointed. If it weren't for what happened, Chloe might have been here, feeling the children's growth with us. Well, it's a natural consequence, but still. Later, I heard Chloe reluctantly returned to her hometown, rented a small apartment, and now lives a lonely life, working part-time in cleaning.
My husband is out on a shopping trip right now. When we visited our eldest son's apartment to celebrate our first grandchild's birth, the door was opened by his wife, who did not hide her annoyance and frowned as she tried to close the door. In a panic, I handed over a $3,000 gift for the celebration.
If there's anything I can help with, just say it. Things might have changed since our time, but I want to support you as much as I can.
Raising a child is very hard. I said this hoping to lighten the load for my eldest son's wife, Elizabeth, but it backfired.
Don't act all high and mighty, we're cutting ties with in-laws like you.
Elizabeth shouted and threw the gift envelope I had just handed her into the trash bin by the entrance. My husband and I were speechless at her actions. Elizabeth glared at us fiercely.
I didn't want to hear such nonsense, that's why I didn't invite you. But he invited you without asking me.
It seemed that Donald had unilaterally decided to allow our visit. Elizabeth was unforgiving and started to complain about our son.
It's unbelievable to invite people home without my consent. Donald is so useless. I made him go shopping on purpose, thinking he would let you in if he was here.
After saying this, she emphatically told us never to come again and closed the front door. Then immediately, we heard the sound of the lock. I could no longer think of my eldest son's wife, who had insulted our son and trampled over our feelings of celebration as family. Overwhelmed with irritation, we decided to cut ties with her. My name is Madison. I've been married to Jeffrey for over 30 years, and we're still close. After our marriage, we had our eldest son, Donald. 2 years later, George, our second son, was born. On holidays, my outdoorsy husband would plan hiking and camping trips for the whole family. Hiking is tiring but gives a satisfying sense of fatigue. I had a blessed life, both in my career and personal life. But life changes. Once our sons started working, Donald and George moved out for solo living one after another. I felt indescribable loneliness as the frequency of direct or even written conversations with my sons, who I used to talk to every day, decreased. Perhaps thinking of me, or maybe feeling lonely himself, my husband invited me to hiking. We hadn't been to the mountains since our sons became university students, but after this event, we often went hiking together. After a few months, we began to settle into our new life. Our sons started contacting us more frequently, and about once every 2 months, they would come home. Though life had changed from when we lived with our sons, it felt right. The loneliness faded, and my husband and I started to enjoy our life as a couple. As our sons approached the age we were when we got married, Jeffrey and I reminisced about our past and discussed their futures. We only had boys, right? I always dreamed of getting along with our sons' wives like real daughters, going to cafes and shopping together.
That would be nice. I want to take my grandkids to hiking. Gotta stay healthy and illness-free.
We shared our dreams, eagerly awaiting good news from our sons. Then, about a year later, our eldest son, now in his 4th year working as a professional, informed us he got a girlfriend. That day, my husband and I celebrated with a drink, overjoyed by the news. But since then, Donald stopped coming home. Wanting to know who his partner was and longing to see our son happy. When will you come home next? I reached out several times asking. He would reply, maybe next holiday.
But it never happened. On the day, a message would come. Sorry, can't make it. And both my husband and I were disappointed again and again. He must really enjoy being with her girlfriend. I remember when Jeffrey and I first dated, I couldn't get enough of being with him. I said this to myself, convincing myself to wish happiness for Donald and his partner. And began to look forward to building a mother-daughter-like relationship with my son's wife. Half a year later, Donald finally brought his girlfriend home. They were planning to get married and came to greet us. My husband and I tried to contain our excitement, eagerly awaiting the day. But when we met Elizabeth, Donald's girlfriend, there was an indescribable atmosphere. At first, I thought she was just nervous, but her words hinted at some hostility. Elizabeth, please take good care of Donald. If you ever need anything, just let us know. Even though I said this with a smile, Elizabeth did not smile back. Instead, we'll manage on our own, she coldly replied. The mood was far from cordial, and Donald sighed. Eventually, after about an hour, the two of them left. They're just independent. That's a good thing, my husband said, trying to cheer me up. They're not children anymore. Let's just watch over them. Yes, you're right. They'll have to live their lives together, after all. Disappointed, I decided to step back and support them from afar. After discussing with my husband, we decided to give them $10,000 as a wedding gift. When we made the deposit, Donald called to thank us. Thanks for the money. We'll use it for the wedding. Is the wedding planning going smoothly? Elizabeth, would she like to wear my wedding dress? I had bought a wedding dress for my own wedding. Though I'd hoped to pass it on to a daughter, I thought it would be nice if my son's wife could wear it. I'll ask her. Send me a picture of the dress. So I took out the stored dress, took a photo, and sent it. But soon after, we received a refusal. She's already chosen a dress she wants to wear. Of course, there are preferences in dress design and style. I was a bit disappointed, but what could be done? That's fine. If there's anything else we can help with, just let us know, I replied. But again, a disheartening response came. We're handling everything ourselves. Indeed, a wedding is for the couple themselves. Still, feeling excluded, I couldn't help but worry. With a heavy heart, I attended my eldest son's wedding. The ceremony, enveloped in happiness, concluded smoothly. The reception was lively, with delicious food, and Donald looked very happy. Seeing my eldest son like that eased my anxiety. After changing outfits, the newlyweds went around for photos. Elizabeth, unlike when she first greeted us, was all smiles. At the bride's side, they posed for many photos, so I looked forward to our turn. But when Elizabeth reached us, "What's the next pose?" the photographer asked her. "We're moving to the next table," she replied. I was shocked. Seeing my reaction, Elizabeth gave me a cold look and said sharply, "The star of the wedding is me. I don't have time to fuss over the in-laws." And with that, she quickly moved on to the next table. As if I wasn't feeling low enough, another shock awaited me. Elizabeth was pregnant and would be having their first child in 6 months. It was certainly joyful news, but I learned of it through the words of the ceremony's MC. Looking around, it seemed Elizabeth's parents and relatives already knew. In contrast, we and the other relatives on the groom's side were visibly surprised. "Why didn't you tell us?" I couldn't contain my feelings and asked Donald. Without any sign of regret. "Elizabeth didn't want to tell anyone outside of those she's close with," my eldest son said. That we, soon-to-be family, were not considered close was astonishing to me. I could barely stand. Pregnancy can upset hormonal balance, causing irritability. I read it in a comic. It must be why Elizabeth's been so harsh. George kindly tried to console me, seeing how upset I was since the photo session. I had felt a distance from Elizabeth since she first greeted us, but still hoped we could gradually become closer and build a good relationship. I didn't want to give up on our relationship with Elizabeth. But maybe it was impossible. My faint hope of getting along well with Elizabeth vanished entirely. And after the wedding, we barely communicated with the newlywed couple as days passed. Worried about Donald's absence, George occasionally visited us. 6 months after the wedding, we got a message from our eldest son.
The baby was born.
The photo sent with the message showed a small baby wrapped in a blanket. Though I hadn't been involved and did not feel like I became a grandparent, I still wanted to celebrate. When I expressed our desire to visit, Donald quickly invited us over, and my husband and I headed to their apartment the next holiday. But when we arrived at the appointed time, our son was out.
Donald has gone shopping.
Elizabeth, opening the door, didn't hide her annoyance and frowned as she tried to close the door. In a hurry, I handed her a $3,000 celebration gift.
If there's anything we can help with, just say it. Things have changed since our time, but we want to offer whatever support we can.
Child-rearing is very hard. I said this hoping to lessen Elizabeth's burden, but it backfired.
Don't act all high and mighty. We're cutting ties with in-laws like you.
Elizabeth yelled and threw the gift envelope I had just handed her into the trash bin by the entrance. My husband and I were speechless at her actions. Elizabeth glared at us.
I didn't want to hear such nonsense, that's why I didn't invite you. But he invited you without asking me.
It must have been Donald's decision to allow our visit. Elizabeth seemed unforgiving, starting to complain about our son.
It's unbelievable to invite people home without my consent. He's so useless. I made him go shopping on purpose, thinking he would let you in if he was here.
Hearing the true feelings of my son's wife, I was dumbfounded. Taking advantage of our silence, she continued.
I'll tell Donald you saw the baby and left in a hurry. Please don't come again. It's a nuisance.
As Elizabeth was saying this,
wait!
She ignored my voice and closed the front door. Then, I heard the sound of the lock being engaged. I realized I was clenching my fists tightly, shocked by what just happened in front of me. My husband didn't say anything, but it was clear he was angry. We could no longer think of Elizabeth, who had called our son useless and trampled on our feelings of celebration, as family. Frustrated, we decided to cut ties with her. After that, there was no contact from Donald for 6 months. Though we had cut ties with our eldest son, our younger son George introduced us to his girlfriend Stella, and they started visiting our home occasionally. Initially wary because of Elizabeth, I gradually warmed up to Stella, who always greeted me with a smile. Eventually, they got married. They even considered moving in with us, thinking about our future.
My mom and grandmother were very close. I hope to have a similar relationship with Madison,
Stella told me. I was so moved I almost cried. Seeing my reaction, my husband said,
we would love that.
And so, we decided to live together with our son and his wife. At the wedding, Stella wore my wedding dress. Both she and her parents
Thank you for letting me wear such a beautiful dress.
Thanked me. While feeling happy, I couldn't help but be disappointed with my eldest son and his wife's behavior. Elizabeth seemed to be in a bad mood at the celebration and ignored us throughout. Donald didn't do anything about her behavior. I was only worried if our younger son and his wife were upset by their attitude. But, to our relief, they looked happy after the ceremony.
Thank you for yesterday. It was a wonderful memory,
Stella said to me with a smile the next day. Later, Stella became pregnant, and I took over the household chores, thinking of her burden. But whenever I looked away, Stella would try to help.
Stella, please rest. I'll handle it. Madison, you're too protective. I'm fine with doing this much.
While having such exchanges, I felt happy living with my son, his wife, and my husband. That day, my husband and George went hiking together, and we were having a relaxed time. Then, the doorbell rang. When I opened the door, there stood Elizabeth and a young girl who had attended George's wedding. I hadn't been told anything at the wedding, but seeing the girl who resembled Donald, I was sure she was his child. The girl seemed not to recognize me and hid behind Elizabeth, looking scared.
It's been a while, Madison. Good to see you're well.
Contrary to her past behavior, Elizabeth greeted me politely. Then she started.
Well,
She began to tell her story.
life has become tough recently, and I came to ask for support.
Support?
Yes. I quit my job because things weren't going well with my boss. But right after I resigned, Donald was fired. His salary was cut, and he was almost transferred to a subsidiary, so he quit too.
Donald tried to find another job but hasn't secured a stable position yet, leaving them both essentially unemployed. Elizabeth had suggested to Donald to ask us for support, but our son apparently refused. After quitting her job without consulting and finding out Donald was fired, Elizabeth called him useless. Donald seemed to be quite angry with her for that. Since then, Donald, who had always followed Elizabeth's lead, started to defy her.
That's why I came here directly.
She said with a troubled look. But all I wanted to say was, "So what?" From our conversation, it was clear that her attitude was the reason things didn't work out with her boss, and I could understand why our eldest son was angry with her. It was too convenient for her to seek help only when in trouble, especially after she caused us to sever ties. But she was desperate for my sympathy.
I even asked my parents, but they refused any financial help. You're the only ones I can turn to. We'll starve at this rate.
Elizabeth pleaded with teary eyes.
Please help us.
However, my heart remained unmoved. I refuse.
Why? It's all because Donald quit his job. As parents, shouldn't you feel responsible and help?
Responsible? You're adults, sort your own issues. You're the ones who cut ties, remember? We're saving money for Stella's pregnancy and our soon-to-be-born grandchild. We have no money to spare for you.
What? That's ridiculous.
Her weak demeanor changed instantly. The moment I refused, Elizabeth raised her voice.
Why support your younger son's wife and not help us?
At this moment, I was approached from behind.
Madison, are you okay?
Worried that I hadn't returned, Stella had come to the entrance. Seeing Stella, Elizabeth's face turned red with anger.
You're living together, too. That's not fair. I'm the wife of the eldest son. It's wrong for the wife of the younger son to move in. Get out.
Startled by the sudden shouting, Stella tensed up.
It's you who should leave this place.
I immediately stepped forward to defend Stella.
Stella proposed living together, considering our future. Unlike you, who only think of yourself. What? Just because I treated you a bit harshly, you favor her? Fine, if you don't support us, you'll never see this child again.
With those words, Elizabeth forcefully pushed a hidden girl to the front. Seeing the girl on the verge of tears, I felt something snap inside me.
You're really the worst kind of person. Huh? Say whatever you want. I've always disliked your preachy attitude. If you care about the child, don't use her as a tool. If you don't change your ways, we'll cut ties with you. Don't ever come to our house again. Don't joke with me, you miser.
Even after this, Elizabeth continued to fuss, using her daughter to sway us, but I never nodded in agreement. Though I thought to let her rant as she pleased, seeing the girl scared by Mom's yelling, I decided to take a drastic action.
If you stay any longer, I'll call the police. Leave quickly if you don't want to make a big deal out of this.
At the mention of the police, Elizabeth, who had been bustling about, stopped talking and left with a look of despair. Later, I heard that Donald and Elizabeth were struggling to find new jobs. Despite finding each other's presence intolerable, they couldn't afford to separate due to lack of assets, and so they were stuck together. They were always fighting. And their bad reputation spread in the neighborhood. They were even reported to the Child Welfare Office, concerned about the bad influence on the child. For the child's sake, my husband and I are considering taking her in. Several months later, Stella safely gave birth to a healthy baby girl. Since her parents' home was far away, Stella didn't go back, so I dedicated myself to supporting her. George and my husband dote on her.
When she grows up, the 5 of us will go hiking together.
They are excited about it. I am committed to doing everything I can to ensure this happiness continues.
Are you sure it's okay to accept this?
I asked the woman in front of me. She responded and nodded, with a charming smile, seemingly filled with happiness.
That made sense. She had submitted a birth certificate.
Although probably she had gone through a tough childbirth, this young woman seemed to savor the joy of a new family and resolve of motherhood in her heart. I accepted the birth certificate because I am a civil servant for working here. I carefully checked the document if there are any errors.
I paid special attention to the father's section, but she didn't change her expression and waited patiently for my process.
Occasionally, she talked to the man standing next to her about a gift.
The man who was talked by the woman didn't even nod properly.
Or perhaps he couldn't. He was pale, trembling, and avoiding my gaze as if trying to escape.
I thought to myself, that makes sense too. Because this pathetic, trembling man is my husband.
I am Sarah, a housewife who has been working in the health bureau for 10 years. I didn't have children, but I had a modest wedding with David, who works in a trading company, and thought we would continue to live peacefully, quietly together.
That's what I believed. I started to sense something odd about my husband David after he passed his promotion exam.
His success would lead to a significant career leap at a young age, so David had been studied hard at home, and I supported him tirelessly while working.
My efforts paid off, and I was truly happy when the results came.
He was seen as a promising person among his peers. He started going to high-end clubs almost every week. It was for introducing clients, as told by his boss.
As David, it must have been the most attention-grabbing period of his life. Maybe he misunderstood something. When he returned from those glamorous and flashy places, the meals I cooked seemed too simple and poor to him, and he gradually started to look down on me.
Cheap chicken again? My salary gonna be increased, so we could afford a bit more luxury. At first, he would say like that, but gradually his words became harsher and turned into criticism directed at me.
Switch to better meat. The meat was good on the celebration day, wasn't it? But I'm scared of buying expensive meat on regular days if I would be a mess it up.
Haha. Your cooking wasn't bad. It kind of feels like you're indirectly saying I don't earn enough, which I don't like. Of course, I never had such intentions.
I was living a normal life and thinking that we needed to tighten our budget, especially when the salary increased.
One day, David finally said,
I can't even tell to the people what I'm eating like this. And he stopped eating my cooking.
When he got promoted, he used to say,
It's thanks to you, Sarah. I'm lucky to have such a wonderful wife. But now he had changed so much. Sarah, aren't you motivated for doing household chores?
Huh? What do you mean? I'm doing everything normally.
You haven't watered the plants outside.
Weeds are growing, too.
And I told you to wash the car, right?
When are you planning to do it?
You keep saying you're busy, but is your job at the health bureau demanding really? I always tried not to let dirty dishes or laundry pile up, but I just didn't have the time for the balcony plants. I couldn't get to weeding on weekdays, and washing the car took even more time. Plus, only David used the car, so it seemed unfair to leave it to me. David's one-sided and condescending remarks increased day by day.
He forcefully linked the household chores to my job and even started to mock the fact that I worked at the health bureau.
I remembered the days I desperately took the civil service exam and managed to suppress my frustration somehow.
If you're busy, I'll eat out for a while.
You don't have to do the household chores.
Next week is our wedding anniversary. Do you remember the restaurant you used to book every year? I had marked it clearly on the calendar. This restaurant was popular, slightly expensive, reservation only, which we had been going to since before our marriage. The old David would have booked it 6 months in advance.
Had that changed too?
When I timidly asked, David suddenly brightened up. But the following words were shocking, so intense, I felt like my heart would shatter. "Ah, that place? Don't worry about it. I've reserved a seat. But on that day, I just can't adjust my schedule with a client. And they told me to set up a meeting, so I thought it was a good place to introduce them." Introduce? What do you mean?
I mean, I'm using the reservation for a business dinner. You get it, right? There's no point in forcibly celebrating on that day. It's my reservation, so it should be fine.
David said it so casually.
I was shocked but felt like I couldn't show my tears, so I just held them back.
That's not what I wanted to ask. I was astounded by David's behavior.
I didn't know how to put my feelings into words and faltered.
He looked at me with annoyance.
If you focused on the housework instead of your job at the health bureau, I'd be more motivated to come home and work hard. But if you can't even manage that, what's the point of working? Why don't you just quit?
It was true that I had been getting home late recently due to helping other departments.
I had no idea if David really wanted me to quit because of my supposedly inadequate housework, but he seems to just wanted to assert dominance and lash out at me.
Although my job was busy and the income was stable. It was important and I took pride in it.
Despite David's harsh words, I had no intention of quitting.
A few weeks later, I was working as usual. The health bureau's reception gets very crowded during campaigns and events. Although it wasn't my department, I helped out by speaking to visitors and conveying their concerns to the staff. Just then, a couple approached me, and the woman handed over a document cheerfully.
"Hello, we've come to submit a birth notification for our child."
It wasn't my department, so I couldn't accept it. I was about to tell the woman I'd check with the staff, then I saw the man next to her. And I was so shocked that I nearly lost my breath.
It was David, my supposed husband. Our eyes met, and he looked just as surprised and then awkward. "Could you check if there's anything wrong with this form?"
The woman, unaware of the situation, was holding out the form and waiting for me.
David's name was written in the father's section of the birth notification. "Congratulations. I'll have a check with our staff, please wait a moment."
I guided them calmly. I went back to check the counter and checked with the staff, but they were all busy. Additionally, they were so occupied. And asked me to check if the necessary fields were correctly filled, even though they couldn't process it.
My mind was in turmoil. Should I have confronted David then and there? Did she know I was his wife when she approached me? I was just helping out with guidance today. It must have been a mere coincidence that I encountered them.
Thank you for waiting. I'll check for any errors now. Yes, please. I returned to them, maintaining my composure and acting as just a staff member. I guided them to a seat to review their submission.
I suddenly realized that the child's birth date was our wedding anniversary, and a pang of pain shot through my heart. I pressed my nails against my wrist under the counter to suppress my voice.
The woman's name seemed Emma. She's 24, over 10 years younger than David. She appeared like a gentle lady, with a calm demeanor. She was lightly but neatly made up, not looking at all like someone who had just given birth. Nor did she seem like the type to brazenly have an affair with a married man and face his wife.
Perhaps her lack of reaction was because she didn't know about me. It might take some time as we don't want any mistakes.
That's fine. David took the day off, and my parents are looking after my baby in the car. She answered with a smile. She talked about how much she loved her child, and described how the baby was small and birthed healthy. Obviously, David, sitting next to her, couldn't say anything and avoided eye contact with an awkward expression.
He must have found my composed demeanor puzzling. David had been staying away from home, and I had suspected he might have an affair.
But I never imagined he had fathered a child, so I took a deep breath to hide my realization.
"If you'd like, please call your parents over. The baby would feel more secure with mom nearby."
"Thank you, I was feeling a bit anxious." "I'll do that." Following my suggestion, she started using her mobile phone. David began to panic, but I pretended to check the form and stepped back to the counter.
I prepared the necessary documents and returned with 2 papers.
The couple looked in surprise. Especially Emma, who was visibly shocked. She stared at the unfolded paper, her face turning pale and starting to tremble.
You haven't submitted a marriage registration, have you?
We did submit a marriage registration.
We are married.
No, that's impossible. On top of the birth notification they had submitted, I placed an unfilled marriage certificate and a divorce form with my name already filled in. I pointed to the blank space for David's on the divorce form.
Could you please fill this in, David? To start a new marital relationship, you first need to get divorced me, right?
It seemed they finally understood. Emma glared at me and then turned a frightening face toward the man next to her. I also looked at David, who had turned pale.
What kind of nerve do you have, submitting the birth notification of a child with your mistress at your wife's counter?
Before David couldn't respond to my strong questioning, Emma stood up abruptly, knocking over her chair with a loud noise. She grabbed at David with a shrill voice.
You deceived me? You said you were single, right? That we would marry because I was pregnant. David!
Of course Emma had no idea he was already married. She had quickly seen through David's cheating personality and decided to have a child to keep him tied down.
Not knowing he was already married.
David, recently promoted and busy, had told his colleagues.
And he told his clients and colleagues that the fertility treatments had been undergoing. Despite he had no intention of divorcing me, it would ruin everything.
So David had made up various excuses for not submitting the marriage certificate. I have work this weekend, let's skip it, or next time is Emma's dad's birthday, let's prioritize that.
While he was making these excuses, Emma's morning sickness was worsened and leading to hospitalization.
As she was in and out of the hospital, submitting the marriage certificate became the least of their worries. That's why Emma completely believed David's claim that he had already submitted the marriage certificate. There are many things to do after getting married. If one thinks about it calmly, like changing the name on your driver's license and bank accounts.
But Emma, exhausted from her frequent illnesses and the major task of her first childbirth, hadn't considered these things.
Her anger was exploded, and her face turning red with fury.
Wait! What about the money I saved for the wedding? Did you spend it with this person? What? David, you borrowed money too?
I was shocked by Emma's question and hurriedly looked at David.
Don't stay silent, explain. We have a child, you know? You are always so talkative. What about the money? Are you in debt to her? What did you use it for?
David remained silent, not uttering a single word. It appeared that Emma had lent him a significant amount of money.
Of course, none of it had come into our household, and there was no sign that David had been living beyond his salary.
Emma was ignoring the other staff trying to stop her, and shook David for demanding an explanation and repayment. I didn't intervene, because I was considering it was also my concern. My feelings for David had already detached completely.
All right, I get it. You want a divorce, right? Then I'll do it right here, right now. I don't need you anyway. Are you satisfied now?
David, finally enraged and turned his face to red, hastily began to fill out the divorce form.
And Emma, you want your money back, right? You approached me when I started to succeed just because you're the daughter of an executive.
His attack then turned towards Emma, who had been crying silently.
How could he say such things to her, especially after she had borne his child? Just as I thought I should intervene, David caught his breath,
and he was staring intently behind her. I turned to look and saw there, a middle-aged couple with grim expressions was standing at the entrance of the health bureau. The woman was holding a baby and not moving, while the man, who was wearing high-end clothes, approached us with long strides. He seemed to be Emma's father. Emma was crying and rushed to the man who had just arrived. Likely they are her parents whom I had earlier suggested she call. Is what I just heard true? The man's low voice interrogated David, who visibly paled. I heard later that David and Emma had met at a dinner with clients. She was assisting her father, a senior executive, in a secretarial role. David was very taken with Emma's innocence, who had just graduated from college.
You seduced my daughter in a business associate and fathered a child, while being married to another woman? Is that true? I didn't invite you to the dinner to make Emma got to be this.
David was scolded with such fierce anger that he stumbled off his chair and fell to the floor.
Where did the money go that I prepared for the wedding expenses?
David, he was forgetting his defiance, and began to tear up and apologized profusely.
The disappearance of the wedding expenses turns out to be the compensation paid to David, another affair partner.
He was involved with a married woman, but they were quickly discovered, then it led to her divorce. The compensation demanded by the husband was paid off with this money. David fancied young and obedient Emma and knew her family was wealthy, so he thought everything could be managed with their money if a child was involved.
His plan was to settle the affair's compensation and somehow deal with divorcing me, then all that would be left would be a wealthy family-in-law and a loving wife and child. Such a deceitful scheme, trampling over others, could never succeed. I will consult a lawyer about this case of marriage fraud. I'll sue you, and of course, I'll report this to your company. You deceived my daughter. Be prepared. No, please.
Emma's father declared his intention to sue and demand action to David's company. David kept apologizing while crying, but Emma's father left quickly with her and the child. David tried to defend himself, but was restrained by the security guards who arrived due to the commotion, and eventually the police were called.
The filled-out divorce form was left in my hand.
Soon after, David's workplace was informed, and they took swift action. His recent promotion, despite the time elapsed, was revoked, and he was demoted due to his dishonest and problematic behavior. His bad reputation was spread, and endangering several business relationships, then putting his company at risk. David was quickly fired and became unemployed.
The divorce was finalized, and I was free from David.
The house was in his name, so I moved to a distant apartment to avoid overlapping living areas. My family was worried, but as David's misdeeds became known, I received their sympathy and support. Faced with compensations to me, his affair partner, Emma, child support, and a fraud lawsuit, and with his company demanding damages, David quickly fell into financial hardship.
Unbelievably, he thought of reconciling with me and stormed into the health bureau, trying to win me back. I was called out for causing a commotion at the service counter. Probably because I'm the one most likely to listen.
But that was back when I was married. Now, I'm divorced.
He's a complete stranger to me.
Most people at my workplace were aware of the situation.
It was embarrassing, but thankfully, after I made it clear, David stopped visiting me, no matter how often he tried.
There were several discussions with Emma, too. It was worst that I kept my marriage a secret, but since I caused trouble, she offered to pay compensation. The newborn baby, with the help of both parents, is growing up healthy.
So, I was not wanting to disrupt their newfound peace. I declined the money. I told Emma it's far better to use the money for the child's sake, and we parted ways. David couldn't find a new job ever.
He looked down on the health department's work, thinking applying for welfare would be easy, but he didn't know about the strict scrutiny for payments. Immediately, his family found out about his misdeeds when they were contacted. His parents, being strict but fair, sent David back home. He ended up doing hard labor as a live-in worker. My transfer to another branch was officially decided because of the commotion caused by David's resentful attacks. It's far enough that the staff there doesn't know about the trouble. It seemed I'd be able to work quietly, and I was being warmly supported and sent off by everyone around me. David would have mocked it as a demotion if he were here. However, my diligent work has been appreciated. It's even better conditions than before. The new life is challenging, but I got a fulfilling job. Finally, a peaceful life without problems is starting.
How could you do this? Sullivan bought my favorite pizza for tomorrow's discharge celebration. And you threw it in the trash. That's terrible.
Rosie, my mother-in-law, said this as she glared at me intensely. I also wanted her to enjoy the delicious pizza to her heart's content. But that was an impossible wish.
If you say so, please look inside then,
I said with a stern face. Rosie looked at me curiously and then slowly opened the box. Right after, Rosie's body started to tremble. My name is Cindy. I'm a 35-year-old office worker. I met my husband Sullivan through a friend's introduction, and we've been married for 2 years. Both Sullivan and I love our jobs, and after discussing it together, we chose not to have children. Friends with children had sometimes worried about the pressure from the mother-in-law. But to me, that concern seemed unnecessary. Of course, there's a reason for that. The apartment we live in is about a 15-minute drive from my in-laws' house. Rosie lives there alone since her husband passed away 5 years ago due to illness. When I first met Rosie, I told her, I want to continue working even after getting married. Rosie really liked that about me.
It's wonderful to be an independent woman. Oh, I'm relieved. I was a bit worried Sullivan might become just an ATM. I'm glad he married someone so capable,
she said with a beautiful smile. I quickly grew fond of Rosie, who was talkative and cheerful. My husband and I moved to our current home a year ago. It was a quick decision based on location and rent because we were busy with work. Because of that. Hey, Cindy. This faucet is old, shall we talk to the real estate agent about it? Sullivan suggested to me, pointing at the dripping faucet. Oh, that. I'll contact Mariah about it. Oh. Sorry, I have to go early this morning. I'm leaving now. Mariah is a friend from my university days. I coincidentally met her working at a real estate agency, and she was very helpful in our search for a place. She seemed uninterested in marriage, enjoying her single life. Since reuniting, Mariah and I would have lunch during breaks, and sometimes Sullivan would join us at a pub after work. I loved those times, but Sullivan started coming home late more often as he became responsible for training new employees. Recently, you have been working a lot of overtime, I remarked, to which Sullivan sighed.
There's this new employee, Emily. She's slow to catch on, and it's been tough.
That sounds hard, I replied while we continued our peaceful married life. Then, we received news that Rosie had been involved in a traffic accident and was hospitalized. Rushing to the hospital, we found her lying in the bed, looking pained. I was walking home from shopping when a car suddenly crashed into me. Can you believe it? And now I have to stay in the hospital for a month. Oh no. Tomorrow was supposed to be my monthly pizza day, Rosie lamented. She had been looking forward to her monthly pizza outing with friends at a local pizzeria. Despite having a broken arm and leg, she seemed in good spirits, which was a relief to us. As Sullivan was busy with work, I made sure to visit Rosie as often as I could. However, she would become gloomy during meals. It's no use, I can't taste anything, she said, apparently having lost her sense of taste and smell due to the accident. But the doctor said it might be temporary. I tried to cheer her up, and she smiled. Right. I hope it gets better before I'm discharged. I want to enjoy pizza again. We laughed together at her playful remark. I kept Sullivan updated on her condition. But my frustration peaked as he continued to use work as an excuse not to visit her.
Hey! I get you're busy with work, but this is too much, isn't it? It's not even a busy season at your company, right?
I questioned, bewildered. He sighed deeply. Like I've said before, it's tough training the new employee, Emily. Don't make me repeat myself, I countered.
It's been half a year since you started training her? If Emily is that incompetent, maybe she's beyond your help. You should talk to your boss.
As I pressed on, Sullivan ruffled his hair. Enough. Don't meddle in other people's business. He then retreated to the bathroom. Other people's business? Knowing he couldn't win the argument, Sullivan always escaped to the bathroom whenever things got inconvenient, waiting until my mood improved. This was one aspect of him I disliked even before we got married. Despite the strained days, I always visited Rosie on my days off. Though her taste hadn't returned, and she often looked disheartened, the news from the doctor that she would be discharged the following week brought her great joy. A few days later, I entered her room as usual and noticed Rosie in high spirits.
Just now, Sullivan came to visit and look. He brought me pizza from my favorite place.
Seeing Rosie so happy, my face turned pale. I quickly snatched the box from her and threw it into the trash can. Rosie was shocked by my sudden action, but she raised her voice.
How could you do that? Sullivan bought my favorite pizza for tomorrow's discharge celebration. And you threw it in the trash. That's terrible.
She glared at me fiercely.
But you can't eat this, not this one.
I insisted.
Just give it back to me,
Rosie demanded.
If you insist, please look inside,
I said, and she slowly opened the box. I had a story to tell her. After I finished, her body began to tremble. The next day, I went to a certain place.
What are you doing here?
I saw several men and women standing in front of me. One of them, noticing me, exclaimed,
What?
In a barely audible voice, he started.
But why? I mean, yesterday.
I confronted him.
Did you think I knew nothing? What are you planning to do with your family home, Rosie's house?
As I raised my voice, Rosie, standing next to me.
Answer me, Sullivan,
she shouted. The truth is, I had lied to Sullivan the day before.
Rosie was supposed to be discharged tomorrow, but she got terrible food poisoning. The hospital just called to say her discharge is postponed. Did she eat something strange? I'm worried.
Hearing my words,
that's terrible. Well, she gets to rest a bit more in the hospital, huh?
Sullivan replied, seemingly pleased. That's when I became certain.
By the way, did you properly take out that pizza from the fridge for this morning's trash?
Sullivan sometimes brought home gifts like snacks from clients. About a week ago, I found a large box in the fridge. I didn't pay much attention, thinking it was just another snack. But after a few days, I started noticing something odd in the fridge every time I opened it.
What? What's this smell? It stinks.
I searched for the source and realized it was coming from that box. It had a fishy and unpleasant smell.
Wasn't this a snack?
I confronted Sullivan when he got home.
Oh, I forgot. That's a pizza someone gave me. The boss ordered pizza for lunch and treated everyone, but I didn't have time to eat.
Thinking back, Sullivan's explanation sounded prepared. Make sure you take this out tomorrow on trash day, I told him before heading to the bedroom. The next morning, I went to the kitchen, sleepy-eyed, and saw the same pizza on the table. Approaching it, I grimaced at the foul smell. When Sullivan woke up a bit later, "Hey, did you leave this out all night?" I asked him.
I left it out because I thought I might forget to take it out. Eating that would definitely upset someone's stomach.
We shared household chores, and taking out the trash was his responsibility. Looking at his laughing, I left for work with a look of disbelief. That day, during my lunch break, I went to visit Rosie. But when I entered her room, I was shocked. The pizza that had been giving off a foul smell just that morning was right there in front of me. Worse, Sullivan had brought it. It was a week-old pizza, left out at room temperature during the heat of summer. Anyone would know eating it would be disastrous. Panicked, I grabbed the box from her and threw it into the trash can. Rosie scolded me, not knowing anything, but after I explained, she slowly opened the box. It looked normal at first glance, probably because it had been in the fridge, but it was slightly discolored. Rosie, unable to smell it, said sadly, "If it had stayed like this, I might have eaten it. I can't taste anything anyway, and above all, it was something Sullivan brought for me. I wouldn't have doubted it." She looked at the pizza with sad eyes. I then said to Rosie,
"Rosie, this may not be the right time to say this, but he is having an affair. He's not visiting you because he's caught up with his mistress."
At my words, she looked up and exclaimed,
"What? An affair? He must be joking. I hate men who cheat."
I thought that also Rosie perhaps had some issues in the past. With that in mind, I decided to enlist her help. Sullivan must have been shocked. His mother, supposedly hospitalized, was standing next to his wife, both glaring at him furiously.
"This is my house. What do you want in my home?"
Rosie's voice echoed loudly.
"Calm down, Mom. Please, lower your voice,"
Sullivan pleaded. Then, the couple with him, looking confused, turned to the real estate agent accompanying them.
"What? Isn't this house for sale? We came here to preview it today. Can someone explain what's happening?"
They glared at the real estate agent.
That's because,
Then,
could you explain to us, Mariah?"
I asked the agent. Sullivan and his friend Mariah couldn't find an excuse and looked down.
"This foolish son seems to have concocted some scheme, but this is my house. I'm sorry, but you'll have to leave,"
Rosie said, and the couple, who had been considering buying the in-laws' house, left angrily, feeling their time had been wasted.
"Let's go inside and discuss this in detail,"
Rosie said, still glaring at them. Actually, I had noticed their affair a little while ago. Embarrassingly, I had been making a big mistake all along. Sullivan's company is on my way home from work, and one day, as I was returning, my mobile phone rang. His message saying, "Stuck with overtime again because of the newbie's mistake," made me sigh deeply. By then, I was already suspecting his infidelity and thinking about how to gather evidence. Once, when I was near his company, I saw a group of 3 young women coming out. They looked like fresh recruits. Watching them, I smiled, reminiscing about my own early days.
"Emily's the star among the newbies,"
one of them said.
"It's been years since a newcomers project got approved."
"I saw McGuire looking pretty jealous," another added. I froze. McGuire was my surname, and Sullivan's too. Was this Emily the one he was having an affair with? As they praised her, and she modestly replied, "Not at all." I was struck by her innocent appearance. Then I did something unexpected. "Excuse me, I overheard you. Are you from the sales department? I'm Mrs. McGuire." Before I was about to say so, they quickly started defending him, thinking I had heard them speaking ill of him. "Ah, are you McGuire's sister? We're always grateful for McGuire's help."
"You know, McGuire is amazing. I often see his wife picking him up at the entrance. They always leave holding hands."
Their words confused me. "Eh? Oh, is that so? I heard he was Emily's mentor. He's not causing any trouble, is he?" I decided to pretend to be his sister. Emily replied, "Me? My mentor is someone else. McGuire isn't mentoring anyone." She seemed genuinely honest. "He is a bit shy, so please keep our meeting a secret from my brother," I said before parting ways. What was he doing? Who was he cheating with? Unforgivable. Unable to investigate myself due to work, I hired a detective. When shown the photos of the other woman, I felt dizzy. It was Mariah, my friend, not some stranger. There were photos of her and Sullivan arm in arm entering a hotel, and others of them at what looked like Mariah's place. They were meeting almost daily. My love for Sullivan vanished. In Rosie's house, facing the 2 sullen figures, I said,
"So, it's troublesome if Rosie gets discharged with the house viewing planned, huh? And to think you tried to feed her old pizza. Are you insane? You could have endangered her life."
I ranted, and Mariah, crying, pleaded,
"Don't blame him. It's my fault. I fell for him. He's not to blame."
Sullivan gently comforted her. What am I even witnessing here?
"Yeah, Mariah. It's your fault. I heard about your bad reputation, You wouldn't have been interested if he wasn't my husband.
Mariah, who had been crying, suddenly froze.
What? What rumors?
I told the flustered Mariah.
About your multiple divorces and how they were all from stealing friends' husbands, and now you're working at that real estate company to pay off the alimony because your last husband found out about your cheating.
I said it with disdain. I heard these stories from a college friend when I first suspected Mariah of being Sullivan's affair partner. In college, her nickname was Crusher. Known for snatching boyfriends but losing interest once she got them. A type of person I could never understand. Sullivan looked genuinely shocked upon hearing about Mariah's multiple divorces, but he said,
"Even so, my feelings haven't changed. We truly love each other. I'm sorry for trying to sell the house secretly. It was her idea, to pay you alimony when we divorce."
Was my husband always this foolish? His naivety gave me chills. He turned to Rosie.
"Mom, let's sell the house. It's not a bad deal. I was going to convince you once we found a buyer. I thought you'd give it to me as a living inheritance. Please."
Rosie, trembling with anger, yelled.
"Like father, like son, both no goods. You saw how much I suffered when Dad cheated. How can you do something so terrible?"
She hit him with her crutch, furious. I wanted to laugh at the sight but held back. Eventually, Sullivan and I divorced. I slammed him and Mariah with all the evidence and demanded compensation from both. Mariah's request to lower the amount because we were friends was laughable. Friendship discount on alimony? Are you stupid? Should I double it instead? I couldn't understand nor wanted to understand her twisted logic. Furthermore, I heard that Mariah got into legal trouble at her company for trying to sell properties illicitly and was sued. Burdened with debt and facing a difficult time, she was rumored to be in a bad state. Of course, she was fired from her company. Serves her right. And as expected, Sullivan was dumped the moment we divorced. He even came begging for reconciliation, waiting for me at my workplace. Before consulting the police, I went somewhere.
"I'm sorry to intrude. I regret to inform you that I've divorced. I felt I owed you the news since you've been so supportive."
I visited Sullivan's company to report the divorce to the executive vice president who had spoken at our wedding. Shockingly, Sullivan hadn't reported our divorce and was still wearing our wedding ring. Of course, mine was no longer on my finger. Sullivan stood there, mouth agape, unable to say a word. Emily and her friends realized.
"So, she wasn't his sister? Wow. McGuire is so toast."
They laughed at the situation. A few months later, he relegated to a depopulated area. I hope he never returns. If he does show up again, I'll go straight to the police. I've been in occasional contact with Rosie since then. Thankfully, her sense of taste and smell fully recovered without any lingering effects. She was too scared to eat pizza for a while, but recently,
"I finally had pizza with my friends after a long time,"
she happily told me. As for me, I'm still dedicated to my work. Frankly, I've had enough of marriage for now, so I'm studying for qualifications to advance my career. My current goal is to eventually move back to my hometown and buy a spacious house to live with my parents.